the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you, as always, for your company. Whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, loads of different ways of listening and watching. Really appreciate you joining us. We always appreciate that. Whether you miss any of the show at all, though, yesterday, you want to catch up, you can go to my YouTube page. We've cunningly called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You never have to miss a thing. Hit subscribe and you can catch up on everything. Now, coming up in this hour, going to be talking about these grooming gangs inquiry, the Labour inquiry, drag kicking and screaming. Bearing in mind, a year ago, anyone who wanted a grooming gangs inquiry was just far right and racist. Remember? Hi, Prime Minister, if you're watching. I doubt it, because you wouldn't learn anything otherwise, would you? Drag kicking and screaming, 4 months on, we still don't have a chair, and now we've had 3 of the sex abuse victims resign very, very publicly, and plunging the gang inquiry into further chaos. They are claiming it's a cover-up, damning it's got a toxic environment. Meanwhile, a leading candidate, a former senior social services chair, she has called out from being a possible candidate to chair the inquiry. So what more chaos to come? And whether or not Home Office Minister Jess Phillips should go, because she's been accused by victims of a blatant lie for disputing allegations that the inquiry is being diluted. Basically, let's not focus on the grooming gangs, what with it being largely perpetrated, and it's every fact shows you, by Muslim Pakistani gangs. And basically, she's accused the victims of lying. The victims have produced the paperwork to show that they're not. And really, is it tenable for Jess Phillips to stay in her job? The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has written a piece in a paper today trying to quash concerns by saying the National Inquiry will leave no hiding place on these issues. But do we even trust the government, given they were dragged into doing this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. A toxic cover-up, victims basically saying this isn't what we signed up to. The Home Office Minister accusing the victims who've resigned of lying when they blatantly have not lied. What's your reaction to all of that? Where does this go from here? Do you even trust the Labour inquiry at all? Who should head that inquiry? Who would you trust to do it? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. As you know, text costs 1 standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about the latest stats, which appear to show that nearly 1.9 million foreign citizens are claiming benefits of some kind here in this country. This is according to an analysis of those who are on housing benefit, universal credit, child allowance, carers allowance, you name it, pension credits even. It's way in excess of the official numbers. We'll talk about that. Plus, peace talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin over Ukraine appear to have been called off and broken down after Russia refused to accept America's terms for a ceasefire to Ukraine, which is basically freezing the front lines where they are now. Russia appears to think they should get parts of the Donbass they haven't even conquered yet, which, of course, Zelensky has said no to. Plus, we're going to talk about Prince Andrew's finances. Who and what is this funding from? And how is he affording everything? Why does he not have to pay rent? Why does he only occasionally pay his water rates? Does he even pay for his lecky and his gas like the rest of us? No wonder the very rich don't care about things like inflation affecting the rest of us normal people if they're not paying any of the bills that it's affected by. Well, we'll talk about all of that. And joining me for all the chat, delighted to say, as regularly on a Wednesday, is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. Morning.
Morning.
Well, as always, quite a lot to talk about.
Just a bit.
I mean, you know, there we are. I mean, home and abroad. Let's start with the grooming gangs inquiry. 3 of the survivors, the victims, I understand why they want to be called survivors, but have resigned. 2 have gone public, Fiona Goddard and Ellie Ann Reynolds, a Herd woman known only as Elizabeth, because of anonymity rules, she doesn't have to give her full name, and she's quite right within her rights to do so. They basically said, look, that this isn't working. It's a cover-up. It's a toxic environment. They're trying to downplay this. They're trying to widen it out. So it's about all group gang, a gang rape, as opposed to these particular modus operandi. Which even the government's appointed, Baroness Louise Casey to do that rapid review earlier in the year, which basically went, there needs to be a full public inquiry. Yeah. And even she made it really clear, predominantly this is carried out by Muslim Pakistani men, and there is a reason behind not just their choice of their victims, but crucially the fact that they were not challenged for 20 years pretty much was because of their ethnicity and their religion, and the urge of the police, the social care workers, the councils and everything to basically brush it under the carpet because it was all a bit awkward, what with community cohesion and being accused of being a racist or an Islamophobe. That is why that aspect is vital to include, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be front and centre of any inquiry. And I think Louise Casey made that abundantly clear. It was clear in her first review, which was lengthy. The quick down and dirty review that she did pointed it out in even more technicolor detail, but said these are the people you need to be looking at, this is what you need to focus on. So why the government feels in its wisdom that it can go and push that to one side is beyond me.
What do you make of the Home Office Minister Jess Phillips? Because to her credit, as a backbench Labour MP, I mean, let's face it, Jess Phillips is the Minister for Jess Phillips. She's the MP for Jess Phillips. It's all about Jess Phillips.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. But she has done some great work, campaigning against violence against women and girls. And she really has. And it's been a really, really big part of her political career. And I think, we should give credit to that. She's then put in the job where she's a safeguarding minister at the Home Office. So, great. This is this is your area of expertise. It's your area of passion, And she basically has completely and utterly lost the trust of the very people she claims to care the most about. But I do do you just care about the victims of other perpetrators? And when these white working class girls from all towns across the country, when they say, but I was targeted because I was white by men who were of Pakistani Muslim heritage, who targeted me for that very reason and who were never arrested and charged, even when there was blatant evidence, absolutely blatant evidence that they were committing a gang rape against underage girls. And it was because of their ethnicity and because of their religion that they were not brought to justice. It's all a bit awkward because it doesn't tally with her PC woke views on Muslim. No, this is it. Muslims are victims, right? Rape victims are victims. But when you've got, I mean, it's almost like she can't compute. I find it really simple to understand that men of all colours and religions can rape, and women of all colours and religions or none can be victims of rape. Yeah. I don't find that complicated at all. But we know for a fact that the religion and the ethnicity of these perpetrators of these grooming gangs is relevant because it's the reason why they were allowed to continue.
That's right. I listened to the urgent question that was in the House of Commons yesterday, where Jess Phillips was there to defend the government's stance. She started off quite well. I have to say, it went downhill rapidly.
Do you think so? When she reads the statement, she always sounds like I'm a little bit bored and I've got somewhere better to be and I'm Jess Phillips and I'm morally superior to you?
She didn't come across like that to begin with.
I heard a different statement.
To begin with, it sounded pretty normal. Pretty good statement, fine. She didn't write it, that was obvious. And then as soon as the questioning came, she got defensive.
Narky.
Sloppy. Yeah, narky. She looked like she would rather be anywhere else. And it did at one point say, I could be speaking to some victims right now, but I'm here with you. And it's like, but this is your job, love. This is your job, and this is really important.
But for me, her whole tone was, how dare you question me?
Yeah. The minute she stepped off script, she then became really narky, really, I would prefer to be anywhere else and don't question me.
And it's perfectly fair, criticise the Tories. You were in power, you didn't do a proper inquiry in this either.
Precisely.
You knew all about it.
We should have done. We absolutely should have done. And that's on us. But now the Labour government...
You were in the Home Office. Was this ever raised when you were there?
Not when I was there. Not when I was there. I dealt
it's all
with...
been covered up.
Yeah, and I dealt with other immigration cases, and because these weren't strictly immigration cases... It wasn't your field. It wasn't in my view, so sadly. Otherwise, I think probably would have pushed for it then.
What do you make of... I mean, we've got a potential chair who has pulled out as well. One of the people being looked at, a senior social worker, Annie Hudson. She's been shortlisted to chair the three-year inquiry. I mean, these things always take longer. Another shortlisted name is Jim Gamble, who's a former senior police officer. Now, again, I completely understand why the victims are saying, hold on a minute, even when we had juries deciding in the case of our perpetrators who were convicted, the judge didn't allow anyone on the jury who was a social worker or a teacher or a police officer or had links to them, because those are the very organisations that perpetrated the cover-up, so they can't be trusted. So I can understand you say, well, I don't want a senior social worker, I don't want a senior former police officer. Jim Gamble, we were discussing on the show yesterday, he's been a magnificent campaigner about child sex abuse, running CEOPS, although he's ex-cop, but I would trust him. I would 100% trust that man, but I can understand why the victims wouldn't.
Yeah, and same here. Why would you believe that somebody involved in police,
any organisation,
any organisation that is being looked at, why would you trust them to be able to go and basically mark their own homework, which is how people are looking at it. But then the question comes, who would you trust to lead up an
a senior
inquiry?
judge? It's normally a senior judge. What you want is a senior judge, because they've got you've already got your peerage or your OBE or whatever it is you want. So you're not looking after anything else, and you need someone who's got a really strong track record of, sending these men to jail, as opposed to going, oh, well, it might be a cultural difference, because we've seen enough of those judges. It just seems to me that's untenable. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Who could run this inquiry? What does it tell you that 4 months in they haven't got a chair yet? What does it tell you that 3 sex abuse victims, we're told the 4th as well, but they've not gone public yet, have now resigned? We spoke to Maggie Oliver yesterday, who's the whistleblower of Rochdale, just a wonderful woman who's put money on the line, to put a career, a job, a reputation on the line for these young women, and she says there's more to come. There's way more to come. There is clearly an attempt to cover up. This is Labour basically trying to, well, God, we've been forced to do this sodding inquiry. We know it's going to make a hell of a lot of problems for us ahead of the next election, with loads of Labour councillors being involved in all of this. We're in a heap load of trouble, and let's just try and make it go away. Well, good luck with that. I mean, I just don't think, good luck with that. It's not going to work, is it? But your
really
thoughts.
isn't.
Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Another thing that won't go away is sodding Prince Andrew. He won't go away. The stories won't go away. Taking away his HRH and then his Duke of York title and all of that utter, abject nonsense that I've got no time for anyway, as you all well know. It's a regular audience. Now they want to take away the Prince title. Again, I don't care. He was the son of the Queen. If you believe it, you either believe in titles or you don't. I don't believe in any titles, right? I don't even believe in the sirs and lords. I'll play along because people seem to care about it when you speak to them as guests, but they all know personally that I don't approve of these things. No one's above me, no one's below me, end of. But, if you're going to believe in them, well, you can't take it away. If you believe in a hereditary monarchy, he's a prince and he stays a prince no matter what he's allowed to put on his headed notepaper. I don't really care what he calls himself. I do care when he was representing our country as an international trade envoy, and when he does a lot of things like his pitch at the palace, and there seems to be some financial benefit for him coming out of these things. I do care that he was put on a security list because he had far too many meetings with a man known to be a Chinese spy. And I do care when he's got a grace and favour, huge big house, 30 bedrooms or something?
It's enormous.
How many friends have you got coming to stay? I mean, do you want that many people to come and stay at your home? It's big grace and favour mansion, Royal Lodge. It's a mansion, okay? He's not only is he not paying any rent on it, he paid for the upkeep, £1 million lease initially, but he's got it until, the whole family's got it until 2078. I mean, good luck surviving that long. But paying a peppercorn rent, so 0 rent. Apparently he pays his water rates only when he feels like it, according to The Sun today. That's funny. I thought I had to pay my utilities. Does he pay his gas bill? Does he pay his electricity bill? I mean, I would like to know, because is it all optional? And this is the thing, and Margaret Hodge, who's the former chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and she's made some really good points today about, at the end of the day, they can't be both private and funded publicly. It's like with Prince Harry, isn't it? It's like you can't be a royal and also then go make money off Netflix. That's not how it works. So he's a public figure. He's been funded basically by his mum, late Queen. Basically indulged her favourite son, and he's got away with stuff for years, and probably she wasn't told the full story on things. At least I hope she wasn't, because otherwise, frankly, really unacceptable, very poor judgment on her part, and I would be surprised by that, because she is a woman who exercised superb judgment as a monarch in terms of, we never knew her political views, we never, she did her job, You're going to have a monarchy, that's as good as it gets, folks, But it's untenable for these people to, they don't pay income tax, don't pay inheritance tax. Well, we have all this fuss about inheritance tax. Well, They don't pay any of the same taxes we pay.
They understand nothing about life. Absolutely nothing. And what I would like to see is him taken out of Royal Lodge. Go find yourself a 2-bedroom flat to rent. Learn how
Fergie's
to...
in one, he's in the other.
Exactly, but learn how to pay council tax, learn how to go shopping. Do all of those things, because he has not got a clue. But where his money comes from...
It's not his fault he was born into that world.
No, it's not, but he is now not in that world through his own actions. Yep. So why should he be allowed to not
Never been even charged
rent?
with a crime, let alone convicted of one.
No, and it's amazing, isn't it? He managed to get his mother to pay off a large sum of money to somebody for something he didn't do.
Or somebody he never even met. I mean, that's the thing. Look, everyone knows what they think about Prince Andrew. It's very, very, very clear. But seriously, there's a lot of questions about where does his money come from.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need to understand.
Never met a dodgy billionaire he doesn't like. I mean, that, again, this is my thing. Where is that money coming from? He got money from his mum. Yep. He got money from working as a trade envoy, and lots of expense. Where is the rest of the money coming from? And he paid back $7 million for works. I mean, that's how big the house is. Imagine if refurbing your home. I think we made a lot less than that for our conservatory. And I've got to be honest with you, I had a new kitchen put in. I don't think it cost $7 million. So this is a big house. Where's he got that $7 million from? What about that? Didn't they have a £10 million ski lodge in Switzerland?
Yeah.
Well, where'd you get the money for that? There's no trail of. And then he had that, South Fork Ranch, the big house he owned with Fergie.
Sunninghill,
and some foreign billionaire bought it like a sort of double the market cost of homes in that area. I'm so sorry, but I don't think this story goes away until we see his finances. We're not going to see his finances, but things are going to come out of the woodwork.
And so it should. And so it should, because if taxpayers' money is flowing one way, which is into the royal family, and we all put money into that, then I think we do have an absolute right to know where the rest of that money is coming from. If he's being bolstered up by our cash, we need to know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to pay a single penny.
No.
People, we've got an established, constitutional money that is the democratic preference of people in this country. That's what we pay for. That's, that's fine. I've got no issue with that. But yeah, if he's not on the payroll. And he was a hero in the Falklands War. But what have you been doing since that you've got that money? I'm just saying that is a man who must have bought a lot of Bitcoin.
You think
I mean, even a few good investments on the stock market won't have paid. Did he buy shares in Apple in whatever it was, the day after it was launched, or did he buy a whole load of Bitcoin 15 years ago? Because there's no other explanation for his finances. I'm just saying. Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on Prince Andrew. Let's also talk about the latest budget revelation. I mean, you never know if they're just flying a kite or if they're actually doing it. But this is around the time, as you'll know, having worked in government, that the Chancellor, although we only hear the budget on November the 26th, this is around the time when it's near to the point it's going to have to be sent to the Office for Budget Responsibility, the independent OBR. Where they basically say whether the numbers add up or not.
Yes.
But we're approaching that time, so they've got to download it. Well, the Times claims that Rachel Reeves is going to launch a £2 billion tax rate on limited liability partnerships. Now, what are those? Well, they are basically a partnership. Apparently more than 190,000 workers do use this. They're used by lawyers, by family doctors, by accountants, and basically there's a tax benefit over an ordinary employment because you're not subjected to employers' national insurance because you're treated as self-employed. Reeves reckons this is unfair. Again, this is the same as the IR35 issue for self-employed people, which is millions, I think about 3.5 million self-employed people. When people who are on PAYE say this to me, and I spent years as someone who was freelance with the private limited company, a personal service company, what it's called. And they say, oh, it's not fair. I have to pay national insurance. Like, and do you enjoy your paid sick leave, your paid holiday, your pension contributions, and all of the other rights that you have as a member of staff? Well done for you, because IR35, outside IR35, you don't get that. And this thing, these people don't get paid holiday. National insurance, if you work it out from your employer, basically pays for your paid holiday.
Yes.
That's basically covers that percentage.
People don't realise. And people don't realise, and the taxation system in this country is incredibly complicated. But I think that when you start looking at these schemes, Rachel Reeves appears to just be looking at which professions can I hit next.
Are we going to be very sympathetic to lawyers, accountants and even GPs now?
Well, I think
we know they're paid highly, They're not people. Most of the times you're dealing with these people when you don't want to be. When you don't want to go to the doctor, you don't want to see a lawyer, you don't want to see your accountant, do you?
No, right up until the moment that you do need one,
Yeah.
and you want them to be good.
Yeah.
And so you think if you start to scare those away, are we going to run out of lawyers and GPs?
The thing is, the
solicitors?
£2 billion quid it's going to raise, realistically,
But that's like a drop in the ocean, though,
yeah,
isn't it,
compared to where we
what
are.
we need?
Absolutely. Just finally, let's talk about where we are internationally, because we did have this planned meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. This suddenly came about in Hungary just after Donald Trump talked about giving long-range missiles to Zelensky in Ukraine. Suddenly he's got taken it off the table. Now Putin's a bit too busy, doesn't want to attend this meeting. And a lot of it is down to the fact that, well, you know, he's not feeling under threat. And it turns out he doesn't want to have the meeting. There's no point in having the meeting because he's not willing to accept the basic terms, which would be a freezing of the front line in Ukraine as it is. He wants to have more of Donbass than he's even been able to conquer so far. I mean, Donald Trump has been treated like a fool by this guy. I don't know why. I don't know why he understands that Hamas are a threat and Iran is a threat. China is a threat. But no, Vladimir Putin, not an issue.
And you do wonder, the summit they had in Anchorage, Alaska, what did they actually discuss? Because seemingly there are two different sides to this. So Donald Trump believes that he had an agreement with Vladimir Putin, that it was going to be frozen on those boundaries and nothing more. And then Putin's gone, well, doing that whole toddler thing, going, but what about this?
Yeah.
And I want this bit, and this bit, and this bit. And he's going to keep doing it. And is it a surprise to us? No, not in the slightest. It appears to be to Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, he's just being played by this guy. But every phone call he gets with Vladimir Putin, we move backwards on this issue. I mean, what do you reckon of British troops being deployed to Israel to monitor the Gaza ceasefire after a request from the US? We're talking about a handful of troops, but
anything I think that we can do to assist Israel is good.
But not entering the war zone.
Not entering the war zone.
It is still a war zone.
It is still a war zone. This is a very fragile time, and I think if we can just show support and show a little bit of solidarity, then that's a good thing. I think if we step over any more than that, it is different territory, and it all kicks off again.
OK, 10:24 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about. Plenty more coming up. Banning the burqa still very much in the news. I mean, yeah. Not question mark for me on that one. We'll talk about that coming up as well. Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on that chaos in the grooming gangs inquiry that 4 months on still isn't actually doing any inquiring. Prince Andrew and his finances, the budget, international affairs, you name it. Get in touch, have your say. This is Talk.
would take a miracle to convince me that the inquiry isn't going to be set up. When you know how corrupted the government are, you've got to really consider, are they in our favour? And I think personally the answer's no. I'll still be raising the awareness and I'll still be fighting for our voices to be heard, but regarding faith in panels and inquiries now, I think my 1% of faith was swiped today after Jess Phillips came across like she did, and you know, she was appalling in the way that she held herself in the House of Commons. It was disgusting to watch.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:27 is the time. Claire Pistol still with me, and you're on the line as well. 0344 499 1000 to have your say. Robert is in Hertfordshire and he wants to talk about where we are with the grooming gangs inquiry that isn't doing any inquiring yet. Good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
I don't mean this literally, but the British public, we want blood now. We want to see, not
totally
literally, we want to see prosecutions, we want to see imprisonments. We don't want to wait another 2 or 3 years down the line. We've had enough of cover-ups with Jimmy Savile, Baby P, or nobody ever got prosecuted. We want blood. I guarantee you, that once you nick the first couple, they start throwing each other under the bus.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
That's what they should do.
And it's really, really simple. You speak to all of the survivors, and again, it's not even like were you potentially survived? Well, no, sorry, the case has gone to court. The men who gang raped me from the age of 12 are all in prison. So we're pretty sure we know they're telling the truth. And you say to them, who did you tell? Do you remember when you told them? And what happened when you told them? And give us names. If you've got any records, give us names. Who was in that job at that time? And you literally work your way through those people, and you go to those people and go, what did you do when you were told? And you'd ask other people to speak up. And we want names. We want names.
We want prosecutions. I guarantee you, once they start prosecuting people, the victims will start looking for compensation. I feel sorry for people living in the area because it's going to be the council tax who's paying for. Imagine how much the compensation is going to come to. It's going to come to millions.
Well, and that's the thing, because again, a lot of these girls, they were in care. They had social workers. There was a duty of care towards them. I've got no problem with these girls, now women, getting compensation for what they went through, because again, they were plied with drink and drugs, and they were treated as if they were sluts or prostitutes or both. And this whole attitude towards them, and it's impacted lives. And one of the reasons why they weren't taken seriously for so many years was because, but she's a drug addict. Well, I think being a drug addict is where you'd want to go if you've been gang raped every day since you were 12.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm not having a go at you now because I love you to bits. But you've got a responsibility. You and your colleagues have got a responsibility as journalists to make sure this doesn't go away.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you.
Best.
Absolutely, I agree. I promise you, we won't let it go away. There are lots of really good people and other channels as well who've spoken out about this and will not let it go away. Robert, thank you for your call, and I completely agree. I mean, Claire, the public want blood. I think we really do. Yeah,
I think so, and I think he's absolutely right that none of us need to let this drop away, which I know certainly you won't. We will be voices for those victims.
Yes, don't stand in the way of Maggie Oliver, guys. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I'm telling you, in any scenario, Maggie Oliver versus anyone, I'm on Maggie Oliver's side. David is on the line in Gloucester. David, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Morning. Well, I've got several points, but my main one is I don't think this is ever going to get cleared up unless we have a clean sweep. And the only way you can do a clean sweep is by bringing in judges or whatever and lawyers from a foreign power, say Australia, New Zealand, Canada.
That's interesting.
And the same with the police force. The leads. I don't say the whole thing, but the leads should be led by those people, because I do believe, I don't care what anybody says, the establishment is very corrupt in this country.
Yes. They're up to their necks in it.
And I think there's various necks in it, and and I'm sure there are people who are ringing up and saying, don't put my name in, because, I was a social worker at the time, I was a counsellor at the time, I was a policeman at the time, and they're now an MP or whatever, and I'm sure that's happening, and I don't care. And if people say it's not, I don't believe it. So let's have a complete foreign sweep. And we also need to make sure that anybody that's in a high-powered position now, they need to be pulled out of that position, and if necessary, and if they're found guilty, their pensions must be removed. We cannot have police chiefs, MPs, establishment figures, civil service, whatever, holding on to their pensions and things when they were guilty of complete neglect.
Or even worse. I couldn't agree with every word more. I really couldn't. David, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. 10:32 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to independent peer Baroness Kate Hoey, what she makes of all of this and plenty more besides. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest. Baroness Kate Hoey is an independent peer and former Labour MP, and is here to talk about, well, some of the biggest stories of the day. A very, very good morning to you, Kate.
Morning.
I mean, where should we start? I mean, grooming gangs seems like the obvious place to start. We've got 3 sex abuse survivors walking away, resigning from a liaison panel who are helping to decide the remit and who should be the inquiry chair for this grooming gangs inquiry. We're 4 months in, not a single inquiry has taken place whatsoever. We've got people who are potential front runners saying, no, I don't want the job, I'm removing my name. We've got the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, basically being accused of lying, and frankly, proof being there quite clearly that she has lied about the survivors when they say you're trying to widen the remit to water things down so it doesn't focus on Muslim Pakistani men as the perpetrators of this crime against white girls. What's going on, and how does this end?
Well, it took such a long time for the Labour Party to get this together and actually get the inquiry set up. So obviously, from the beginning, victims were feeling very angry about it. And then there's been nothing but one issue after another. I mean, I have to say the Home Secretary, in a statement she made last night, did try to sound very, very strong on the issue. I was still disappointed that she didn't want to actually ever use, and no government minister ever wants to use the word Pakistani. No. They always try to hide it in some kind of wider words that bring in more people. But
well,
actually,
they often say Asian, don't they? But like,
yes,
it's not Asian men. That's actually a slur on men from other backgrounds. Again, it's not all Pakistani men. Of course it isn't.
Of course it's not. But it was predominantly in those particular areas, it was predominantly Pakistani, and the public know that, and that sounds like they're trying to hide something. Yeah. I also think, I think I feel a bit sorry for Jim Gamble, because actually I know him. He's from Northern Ireland originally, and he's a good guy. But the problem is, no police officer, however they have not been involved, is going to be satisfy the victims who feel very strongly that the police were involved in some way in this, and therefore I think he is going to have to be ruled out. And they were going
Which is such a shame, because he is. I mean, my guest yesterday, Philip Ingram, was, we both dealt with him over the years. He's a former police officer, which is an issue, as you say, but his work on tackling child sex abuse since his work as police officer has been superb and beyond reproach. Yes,
I wondered if it might have been possible for him to, if they're thinking of appointing him or talking about it, to have actually met privately with some of the victims beforehand, before all this came out. Now it's very, very difficult. But, it is something that she has decided, the Home Secretary is going to be judged on. And I have to say, I mean, I'm sure some of my former Labour colleagues won't like me saying this, but I do think that Jess Phillips has had her time in that office. I mean, she clearly now is under huge pressure. She, behaved, I thought, quite badly yesterday in the House of Commons in her reaction on the statement.
It's always emotion for her, isn't it? And
it is.
And there's a certain arrogance there. There's a certain, how dare you question me? I've campaigned on this issue for many years. Who do you think you are attitude.
Yes, I think, and that is coming over more and more. And I think even I was looking, I think it was John Healy was sitting beside her when she was having that kind of explosion. And I wouldn't be surprised if many of her colleagues actually do begin to think that, I'm not saying she shouldn't go into another job or something, but certainly I think she's been in that now and has obviously lost all respect of those victims who are most important in this.
At the end of the day, they are the only people who matter.
Yeah. So I think the Home Secretary would actually, be quite would get a lot of extra points if she was to get the Prime Minister to agree to remove Jess.
Yeah, I think the politics of that, given where the Prime Minister's popularity is with his own party and indeed the public, is unlikely. I imagine there could be a shuffling at some point. I mean, she's just clearly not up to the job. I think that's the other key thing. But also, if you're accusing a survivor of child sex abuse of being a liar, and then she's able to come back and go, no, you're lying, because here's the proof that, yes, you were trying to water. She says there was no attempt to water down the remit, so it wasn't just focusing on the grooming gangs. And there's literally a document asking them, shall we water down the remit?
No. So either she was badly briefed, in which case she's not up to the job, really. She should have been asking the questions.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Prince Andrew. Still a prince, by today, not Mr. Windsor. Pressure on him, but also pressure on the royal family generally, particularly, the king now is growing over, this freebie 30-bedroom mansion, the Royal Lodge, which he's paying no rent, which he's got a long lease on. Apparently barely ever paying his water rates. We don't know. Is he paying his lecky bill, his gas bill? Who knows? Where is his money coming from? How does he afford the lifestyle he and his wife have? There's no discernible income other than his military pension, which is, way below what he spends on a week. A weekend away skiing costs more than that entire income. So where is his money coming from? And are we footing the bill for this supposedly playboy prince who has embarrassed our nation?
Well, clearly, the public purse should not be in any way funding anything to do with his lifestyle. The royal family personally, without any public money, are quite wealthy. So I don't see why they couldn't find him in many of their estates, a small house that he could move to and live. I mean, after all, I think we do have to remember that most families who have somebody in their family who behaves appallingly or even goes to prison, they usually rally round the family. And no matter what Prince Andrew's done, he is still a member of a family. Yeah. And therefore, I think we have to be careful about, sort of almost wanting him to go out and sleep in a tent, which maybe some people would. And then I think the other thing I would say is, I do feel that there are a lot of people now wanting to keep this going as a big issue because they don't like the royal family. That there are, but I think we have to sit back and remember, he hasn't actually been found guilty of anything in this country.
I was just going to say, he's not actually even been accused of a crime in this country.
Well, yeah, and I just think we need to sort of balance that a little bit. Now, I think he, I don't really want to go into what I think of him personally.
Go on.
Well, but I mean, the reality is he has got no public role now. He's lost all respect in the country. He's lost any chance of getting a decent job probably anywhere in the world. And I think, we should try and kind of get him off the premises, in the sense of off anything out of public money, and let him go off and reflect on.
I don't think he will. I think he's too thick and arrogant, frankly, to do that. But let's also talk about, we talk about the public purse. Let's talk about where we are in terms of the budget, because it's coming up 5 weeks today. We're going to have the budget on the 26th of November. And the Times are saying that one of the things Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is planning to do is a £2 billion tax rate on lawyers, family doctors and accountants. Not the people perhaps most people would have that much sympathy for, largely pretty high earners. But basically, the idea is that something like 190,000 workers use what's called limited liability partnerships, and particularly lawyers. And basically there's a benefit then. They don't have to pay employers' national insurance, which of course, as we know, has gone up, and the threshold for paying it has gone down. So that's quite a big chunk of money. And it's a tax benefit. That said, it also is for people who don't get paid holiday. So, same as the people out who were working under or outside IR35, people who are working as freelancers. That's a few million, people who work as plumbers, journalists, plumbers, electricians, builders and the like. What do you make of this? Is this, apparently £2 billion is what she can raise, but does that touch the sides? And are these the people she should be aiming to get money from?
Well, I think personally that this particular tax, or if this measure is carried out, that won't be one that you'll find sort of people jumping up and down, being furious about.
It's not pensioners' winter fuel.
It's something that actually most people hadn't probably realised, and that there was this way of getting away from paying employers and national insurance. So I don't think the amount raised is obviously not huge. So she's going to have to look for other things. But the more, it's just so common sense to me that the more and more we tax people, and the more and more we try and take money away from supposedly wealthy people, that we end up with fewer jobs, people moving away, and we have to tackle, and they couldn't even tackle the welfare budget when they had that minor thing recently. So I think one of the positive things about the budget, or the day before the budget, I think 2 days before, there's going to be a huge farmers' protest. And I think all the tractors are going to come out all again, and I will very much be supporting that, because that is one area of the small family farm tax that just should never have happened. The inheritance
the public
tax.
are very clear on that one, aren't they?
Clear on that,
well, you talk about the benefit of the welfare reform. One of the things that's been coming out recently is quite how many people who are foreign citizens who are being able to claim benefits. And some latest analysis carried out on the official figures from the Centre for Migration Control is that they reckon some nearly 1.9 million foreign citizens are able to claim benefits currently, and we're talking about everything from housing benefit, child allowance, carers allowance, disability benefits, pension credits, all of that. And we're looking at £10 billion of universal credits alone being made to foreign citizens. Now, and an extra 1.5 million benefit claimants among those born abroad who have since gained British citizenship. So that's 3.4 million benefit claimants who are foreign born. Now, someone who's British citizen, you go, well, okay, fair enough, they're entitled to everything. But a lot of these people got the citizenship simply because they've been here 5 years. You've come here, you've worked 5 years, but you can then stop working. You can claim anything you want. And this is not where the British people are anymore, is it?
It's shocking, and that's not taking into account all the help and support we give to migrants and asylum seekers before they've been given any kind of status in the country.
Well, these would be legal. These vast majority of these are people who come over legally.
Yeah, many of them who eventually will get the 5 year, will have been here illegally. again, that's something that, no government, I think the last government really didn't do very much about that either. They're now obviously saying that they would. And to be fair, Labour is now saying that they're going to put it up to 10 years before you can claim, have right to remain. But no one should be coming to this country who doesn't want to work and doesn't want to be, and they shouldn't be allowed to be given that kind of status until we know that they have become truly wanting to be part of the British state and get citizenship. I mean, citizenship should be much harder to get to start with. I mean, I think it's much too easy, and I probably wouldn't be particularly keen on dual citizenship either.
But again, it shouldn't be something handed out like confetti. Just related to that, and really tight on time, but I need to go to a break. But related to that, people, joining this country culturally as well as economically. Would you agree with Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary for the Tories, that we should ban the burqa?
The burqa is the one that completely covers you with a little thing over your eyes. Not
burqa and the niqab burqa.
And I do not think anyone should be involved in any public. They shouldn't be allowed to go into a post office, into a national insurance, or any of the benefits office, anything fully covered. When I had people come to my constituency, very rarely, but I would very politely say to them, I'm sorry, but would you mind taking off? And women, they always did.
Okay, very interesting. Funny enough, the men aren't required to cover themselves up. Never works that way, does it? Baroness Kate Hoey, always good to talk to you. I'm going to get Claire Pearsall's thoughts on all of this coming up in a few moments. First up, though, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about overseas, what is going on with Ukraine, Putin and Trump. That meeting is cancelled, and indeed talk about Gaza as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
I remember talking to Matt Hancock at the time, who was the health secretary, and I said, Matt, who is in danger, who is dying? Why don't you just protect the elderly and the vulnerable and let everybody else get on with it? Locking up all these youngsters was insane, and I believe that this is a ticking time bomb for society to be picking up the pieces in many months and years to come. The mental health issues that we really haven't even begun to scratch the surface of, I think you can directly link back to the closing of the schools.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's taught the Home of Common Sense. 10:51 is the time. Claire Pearsall is still with me. I just want to get your quick reaction actually to what Kate Hoey had to say in terms of where we are, particularly on the benefits. I think 1.9 million foreign citizens claiming UK benefits, another 3.4 million who were foreign born who've now got citizenship claiming. That's just not going to tally with the British public anymore, is it?
No, it isn't, and you can understand why they're going to be fed up. But I think that we need to look at anybody who's claiming benefits, because the benefits bill in this country is unsustainable.
And it's mostly
Full
Brits.
stop.
I would like everybody to be working. I'm old-fashioned like that.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's curiously left-wing on this issue. I believe Mark said it, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Everyone's forgotten about the first bit.
Exactly.
If you're able to work, you should work.
Yep.
End of full stop. Moral, civic duty. I don't know why people think that's an issue. And if your kid's not working, I've got a problem with you as well. Yes. There we go. It's that simple. It's that simple. Love to hear your thoughts on all that. 0344 499 1000. Let's turn our attention to foreign affairs now with Cormac Smith, a former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. A very, very good morning to you, Cormac.
Julia, good morning to you. It's lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Well, I wish we were in lovelier circumstances and Donald Trump had woken up to the threat of Russia the way he's woken up to the threat of Hamas and Iran and even China. But he still, for some reason, has this blind spot when it comes to Vladimir Putin. There was a plan for more talks between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Not that perhaps we would have been that optimistic about what would come of it, but it turns out that Russia, doesn't want to go ahead anymore. There's no point because they don't accept basic ceasefire terms, which I still think are unacceptable to Ukraine, but even fixing the lines of control where they are right now. Putin says he wants control of even more territory than he's even conquered already before he'll even talk about a ceasefire. Where are we at?
Look, Julia, it's important, and I share your frustration, but it's important to know that Russia has not indicated in any way that they want peace. There was a meeting the other day between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov, where Lavrov made very, very clear that Russia's aims our demands were still maximalist. Now, something that people need to understand is this 25% of the Donetsk Oblast, which Putin does not hold. Ukraine still holds it, and Putin says that he wants that as part of any peace negotiation. He is saying that there must be a peace agreement in place before there is a ceasefire. This goes against all norms of peace negotiation. But what's important to recognise, that 25% of Donetsk is heavily fortified. It's what Alexander Stubb is a good friend of Trump's, by the way. They play golf together. He's the Prime Minister of Finland. Sorry, he's the president of Finland. Yeah. He recently described this 25% heavily fortified by Ukraine as the highway to Kyiv. Yeah. So Putin wants that because it is of strategically critical importance. There's something else in this that I've noticed. This, I think, is a sign of Zelensky finding a way to stand up to Trump in the most in the softest and most non-confrontational ways. We had leaks from the White House that talked about Trump shouting, swearing, and throwing maps off the table during the meeting on Friday. Zelensky clearly. So are we back to the February meeting? Yes. No, because Zelensky clearly didn't rise to the bait. He came out, his first pressers were very, very positive. He talked about, yes, we haven't got the missiles yet, the Tomahawks, but it's still on the table. Yeah. So I think, we also heard from that meeting that Witkoff, had pressured Zelensky very, very heavily to accept Putin's terms. These are terms, giving up that 25% of Donetsk, these are terms Ukraine can never accept.
It's basically conceding the right, and also, especially given that we haven't got the proper guarantees that they've been asking for, this basically would be giving up the whole of Ukraine to Putin. Here's the thing, it did look like Putin was willing to talk when there was the possibility, casually mentioned by Donald Trump, we may well give these long-range missiles to Ukraine. I mean, we've had missiles provided by us being used on Russian territory already. We know the only thing that Putin's going to respond to is basically the reality that you're going to lose.
Yeah, look, the Tomahawks are different. They have a range of up to, I think, 1,500 miles. What we have given them, Storm Shadow, is about 200 miles.
Yeah.
They are particularly stealthy, i.e. they're hard to shoot down. And I've been told by a military friend of mine that they can be put through a bathroom window at a range of 1,000, 1,500 miles. They are incredibly accurate. They wouldn't be a game changer in themselves, but Putin was clearly very, very concerned about this.
Yeah.
So,
Zelensky of intent.
Yeah, Zelensky came out the other day and he said, when tomahawks are taken off the table, then Putin loses interest in diplomacy. When the tomahawks were on the table and it looked like Trump was going to give tomahawks, suddenly Putin wanted to talk. Okay. Trump has rolled back on that. He hasn't said no, but he's rolled back on it. So Putin becomes more maximalist. Yeah. As you said, when are we going to learn?
Yeah, and once again, we've got the European nations in NATO very strongly backing Zelensky. We've got, the NATO racing over to Washington to try and sort of, basically, talk about the 12-point peace plan that they've got. But, I mean, Zelensky is compromised. I mean, to even have to give away an inch of territory is a massive compromise. Anything, by the way, would have to go to a vote of the Ukrainian people. I think after 3.5 years of vicious warfare and so many of their young men dead, and indeed their civilians who've been targeted as well, I can't imagine they're like, we would go, yeah, all right then, we'll give it all up now. Where do we go from here?
Well, look, I believe this is horrible. This is realpolitik, but I believe where Zelensky probably is, and even if it went to a vote, the Ukrainian people would be freezing the conflict along the current lines. This is what Putin absolutely refuses to do. That would be a de facto recognition of the lines of demarcation. It would never be a de jure. Ukraine will never recognize de jure that these 5 oblasts. Remember, this Crimea that was illegally taken in 2014, and this is existential for Crimea. So, but I think the place that they are in at the moment is that they could, and I would say possibly would accept a de jure freezing on the current lines. But then it's all about the security guarantees.
Which the US...
It's about how we get behind them and we turn Ukraine into a steel hedgehog. And also what is left, the 80% of Ukraine that's left, if we look at what happened with West Germany after that was divided in 1945, with the support of the West Germany became one of the world's economic powerhouses. And with the social capital and the resources that they have in and under their black soil, Ukraine is a sleeping giant.
Exactly, and a huge nation. It could be a huge asset, joining the EU and all of that. Yeah, Cormac, really good to talk to you, a former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. Thank you so much, really appreciate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. We'll hear about Claire Pearsall's thoughts on that. We're also going to be talking more about the grooming gangs inquiry. It's fallen into abject chaos. Does the Home Office Minister Jess Phillips have to go after she was basically shown to have lied about the claims of the survivors who have quit from the panel? We'll talk about all of that up next. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, or watching on YouTube or in your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. Thanks also to Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, who's joined us. Didn't get a chance to have much to say over the last two guests, so we'll come back to you very quickly on that. But if you do miss anything of the show, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the Labour grooming gangs inquiry. Complete chaos it's been plunged into. Big question marks over the future of the Home Office Minister Jess Phillips after she basically accused one of the victims, the three sex abuse victims who've resigned from the liaison panel on the advisory group, basically, you know, what the remit of this inquiry should be. 4 months on, by the way, still haven't decided that. Who should be the chairman? They still haven't decided that either. This is absolutely stuck in a quagmire right now. Leading candidate is pulled out as well. But she's basically accused by victims of a blatant lie to them, of basically saying that they were lying by saying that they'd been trying to basically water down the inquiry, which clearly documents show they had been trying to do. We're also going to be talking more about, because my blood doesn't boil over, Boris Johnson and his evidence to the COVID inquiry yesterday, where he said that, yes, lockdown rules did go too far and they'd let down a lot of kids. That's okay then, Boris, don't you worry. We'll just move on with our lives as, you know, millions of children's lives were ruined. Don't worry about it. Anyway, we're also going to be talking about the NHS doctor who celebrated the Hamas attack on October the 7th, has made numerous comments online since and in public, who's been arrested on suspicion of stirring up racial hatred. Dr. Rama Aladwan, she's a junior medic training to be a trauma and orthopaedic surgeon. She told police, "You are doing this for the Israeli Jewish lobby." Of course she did. She was arrested by South Gloucestershire Police on Tuesday morning. You may remember she is the doctor who posted online saying that she was banned from shows like mine because we didn't want to hear the truth. I immediately invited her publicly onto the show, no one is banned from the show, and invited her privately as well. She definitely saw the post because she replied to it, just chose not to actually come on the show. So I'm not quite sure how you can be banned from a show which you refuse to come on. But there we are. That's the territory we're in. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about today, including, I think, particularly Labour's grooming gang inquiry. It's in total chaos. 3 of the sex abuse victims, now survivors, have now resigned. They've labelled it toxic and they've said it's a cover-up. Big question marks, as I say, about the Home Office Minister Jess Phillips and her basically, you know, accusing survivors of sex abuse of being liars when they've got the paperwork to show they haven't been liars. It's quite something. Does she survive in that job? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1 standard network rate message. Claire Pearsall, thank you once again for joining us. And I want to come on to where we are with Ukraine and indeed Israel and Gaza as well in just a couple of moments. But we've got to start, I think, with the issue of the of these grooming gangs inquiry. Where do you think we are? Because a year ago, Keir Starmer basically said anyone calling for a national public inquiry into grooming gangs was far right and a racist. And then he changed his tune after Elon Musk got involved, and basically everyone went completely, you know, crazy about it early in the year and dragged kicking and screaming to the decision that there would be a public inquiry. 4 months on, we have no formal remit, no time frame, no chair. Yeah, we've got 3 people who were victims who were supposed to be helping who have resigned. It's not looking good, is it?
No, it really isn't. And I think at the moment he, the Prime Minister, decided that there was indeed going to be an inquiry, you should have in place or in your mind someone that you want to chair it and roughly what your terms of reference are going to be. None of this is going to be difficult because inquiries have been set up and inquiries have been run over the decades. It isn't unusual.
She used to work in the Home Office. They've had loads.
I'm well versed in all of this. So it isn't hard. Now, you have to have plans B, C and D because people aren't always available to be chair. They don't want to do it. They're not available, whatever the reason may be.
Or the victims don't want them.
Or the victims don't
And where are
want
you on that? Because the argument has been, we can't have someone who worked as a senior social worker or a senior police officer in charge of the inquiry, when we know that social workers and police officers were among those who not only ignored and covered up these crimes, sometimes they helped perpetrate these crimes.
Yeah, and I can understand that view. And if you're talking about somebody who is in a senior in the police force or in social services, then they are effectively going to be marking the homework of possibly some of their colleagues or former colleagues, and you can understand why the victims are going to look at that and say, how transparent are you going to be? How fair are you going to be?
And people do try and cover up. They cover up for their old colleagues. Well, they do favours. They do that. I mean, we were talking on the show yesterday. I was thinking Baroness Louise Casey is someone I'm very happy with. She's clearly no nonsense. Taylor language, doesn't care who she upsets. I've got massive respect for her. Won't ever agree to come on the show, which really annoys me because I think she's just a fantastic no nonsense figure. But Jim Gamble is one of the names that was mentioned, and he is a former senior police officer, but he is also someone who has worked tirelessly tackling child sex abuse since leaving the police with CEOPS, child exploitation online body. I mean, I would understand accepting him, but I also understand why the young women who have been victims and know that lots of people appear to be really nice in public and actually behind closed doors they are either going, yeah, she's just a slut or a prostitute, I don't care if she's been gang raped every day at the age of 13 by men in their 50s. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what happened.
Yes.
And it's like all these people who go, oh, well, they're these people are straight up. These women have lived the reality of an awful lot of people who are upstanding members of society, in uniform or not, who have let them down. Yeah,
they have looked at them as if they are worthless individuals who are lying, who are alcoholic, who are drug taking. And you think when somebody is 12 and they've got that level of alcohol abuse, there has to be a reason for it. They're children at the end of the day, and they weren't believed. And
there is no such thing as a child prostitute. It's not possible.
It's a rape victim.
That's all. It's just...
Don't call it anything else.
It is mind-blowing. I mentioned on the show yesterday, I've got a friend who's a detective and involved in some of these cases, and one of the things that she has to do is she's befriending these victims, but they can't get them to give evidence, okay, because they're absolutely convinced, these 15, 14-year-old girls, they're absolutely convinced that the 40-year-old bloke who picks them up in his sports car and gives her drink and drugs and buys her jewellery is her boyfriend and loves her. But of course she's from a care home. Her parents have neglected her, the dad's abused her, they've been in and out of care, they've finally got someone who pays them attention, is really nice to them, and then after a few months, well, then you're expected to I'm going to share you with my mates, and then it all starts, and then they're given drink and drugs to keep them compliant, and that's what happens. And one part of her job as a woman having to watch this is literally to say and talk to them as often as possible, and follow them, and so whose car did you get into? Do you remember the license plate? What was the address? Do you remember? Have you seen that man before? So that 40-year-old man who mainly raped you last night and beat you up. Do you know where he works? Do you have his name? What did they call him? Did the other man know him? I mean, they're trying to get this much information and then having a record of it, getting as much evidence now, so that in 10 years' time, when those girls finally accept that they were used and abused, and these were not their boyfriends, because they're going, no, he's my boyfriend, he loves me, that they can finally have the evidence, but they'll have collated the evidence along the way. Can you imagine doing that as a job? And I know we'll criticise police officers who've done a bad job, but so many police officers are doing the worst work in the world, trying to, and they literally, I'm like, why don't you prosecute these men? She goes, because they won't. Yeah, they won't claim they were raped. You can't prosecute someone who says they're not a victim.
And how do you want to go and take that girl out of that situation and just literally rescue them out of it?
Give them a ticket to other side of the world.
Exactly. I mean, that must be such a difficult job.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
No. I think anger would get the better of me, and I'd go and find the guys in the cars and deal with it myself, which is not what.
Yeah, we know what's happened over the years. The dads who did that, they ended up getting prosecuted. I mean, again, when she told me that, I have to say, just broke my heart. Just broke my heart. Where are we with Jess Phillips? We mentioned her earlier, Home Office Minister. I say everything involving Jess Phillips is always about Jess Phillips. I think she's done brilliant work tackling violence against women and girls, but I also think that she is an egomaniac, and I think she's in a position as a minister now where she's clearly out of her depth. Her behaviour in the House of Commons, not playing a clip of it because it's quite you have to get the gist of it, quite a long clip. She got very emotional, as she always does. I thought her tone was completely wrong. She has basically accused at least one of the victims who has spoken out of lying when she claimed that they're trying to water the inquiry down. They are trying to extend the remit to basically mean that it's not about Muslim Pakistani men doing this. They're going to make it loads of different group crimes, whereas the particular modus operandi is about grooming gangs operated by Pakistani Muslim men from actually one particular part of Pakistan as well. Let's not tar everyone with the same brush. And they particularly chose white girls for religious and ethnic reasons. And we know that. It's come out in court. There's loads of evidence for this. And they want to water it down. But calling a victim a liar when that victim then comes back and goes, well, here are the receipts, because here's the document we were sent saying, do we want to... They don't use the word watering down, but they do say, do we want to widen the remit?
And I think when you have to ask that question, I think that the victims are going to look at it and say, they're going to widen this. And I would come to the same conclusion. I don't think Jess Phillips handled it very well in the House of Commons yesterday at all. Started off fine when she was reading scripted words. As soon as it goes over that, she just got so defensive. And I sat there and listened to it, and it was quite a lengthy, urgent question. Everybody in the chamber was asking the same question, why isn't this working? And she just pointed the finger of blame at absolutely everybody else. Yeah,
but if you're blaming the women who've been blamed, if you've been called a child prostitute when you've been gang raped when you're underage, don't think you're willing to take Jess Phillips calling you a liar. No. Do you know what I mean? No. These girls, these young women, they've taken on better than Jess Phillips. Yeah. Thank you very much. You ain't going to win, love. I think she's untenable to keep her in the job, personally. Untenable for Prince Andrew to stay in Royal Lodge as well. His 30-bedroom mansion lodge. I mean, it's like the place that William and Kate moved into some
cottage.
And Harry and Meghan. Again, a 10-bedroom cottage. I've hired the old hot cottage for a weekend escape.
2-bedroom.
They've never had 10 bedrooms. What the hell's going on? What do they know what these words mean? What they mean. It's not a palace. Is that what we call our houses now? Not a palace. But anyway, I mean, genuinely. But the main thing is he's not paying rent. He's got a long lease. He can't be kicked out even if the King wants him to. He's not apparently even paying his water rates just when he feels like it. We know that the royals, and this includes the King, by the way, even when he was Prince Charles and now he's the King, it's the same with the Queen, they're not required to pay income tax because it's to His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So he's on a technicality.
Pay yourself.
We're told they do now. As of about a decade or so ago, we're told they do, but we don't know what rate. We don't know whether they pay 20% like people on low incomes, or whether they pay the top rate like all the other people who've got millions and millions of pounds of income. We don't know how Prince Andrew's being funded. As I say, never met a dodgy billionaire he doesn't like. This absolutely stinks. It absolutely stinks that we are paying for this. He's a wrong 'un. He hasn't been convicted of a crime, hasn't even been charged with a crime, but he's a wrong 'un, and we know he's a wrong 'un. He's not honourable. He's got no place in the royal family. They don't want him. We don't want him, but we certainly don't want to pay for him.
No, we don't. I think we have a right to know why our money is being put towards somebody that is of absolutely zero benefit to the UK taxpayer. I'm all for the royal family. I support the royal family. What I don't support is somebody who is clearly just tagging along, doing their own thing, not caring, not bringing any benefit to the United Kingdom or the armed forces or anything, but just gets a free house out of it.
Well, we're told again, this is, it's on the Crown Estate, and there's an element where it's very close to Windsor. It would be difficult to rent this out publicly. Could you therefore get the full market rent? But also, that this money, it's from the Crown Estate is different, but the Crown Estate is required to maximise income, to give money to the taxpayer. So there is actually a duty of care there.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and I think they need to look at how they deal with the properties that they have, and this is what I'm hopeful for Prince William coming in and modernising.
Well, if William and Charles, they want to pay for their their brother, their uncle, that's absolutely fine. I don't want to pay a single penny, and I really, really, really object to privileged people on big incomes not paying the same bills that everyone listening and watching right now and everyone working in the studio and I and you have to pay. That we all have to pay water bill, your council tax, your electricity bill, your gas bill. We all have to pay those bills, have to pay our taxes. We don't get a choice about it. And I want everyone in this country to have to face the same stuff. I don't think it should be optional, and I don't care. And I include inheritance tax. Now, I completely understand how the royal properties don't get subject to it. That's a different thing. But everything else, the Duchy of Cornwall and everything, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't see why someone who's built up their own business for years has to then pay 40% income inheritance tax.
Yes, and they get to get away scot-free.
No, I'm sorry. Again, you can be a supporter. I'm support of the Queen. The late Queen, who did the job very well. I'm not a monarchist. I do find it quite, to a certain extent, there's an element for me is like, well, you want to have one family, and you say we're not going to choose who they are. We're not going to elect people. Well, fine. Then you end up with the Prince Andrews. Then you end up with the Prince Harrys. There you go. But you don't get to pick and choose. You said you didn't. You want an you want one family, and we get the royal family from that line. Well, then there you are. Look, there was a time, not so many years ago, when Prince Andrew was, next in line to the throne after Charles.
Yes, and
he's now pushed down because
he's way down the list, because of all the children that came in. And this is the point. This is what you end up with, and it's inconceivable that we have no oversight to this. And that's what I find very, very difficult.
You're either a private individual or you're in some way funded by the public purse. Which is it? Because if you're in some way public, then we have a right to... You lose your privacy at that point. Same way, we get to know what, an MP earns.
Yes.
Because we pay their wages, so we have a right to know what they earn. It's ministers and payoffs for Angela, Rayner. I mean, we have a right. If it's our money, we have a right to know, don't we?
Of course we do.
Look, let's also talk about, given, we've got budget coming up and talk about tax rates. Look, we're all going to end up paying eventually. Trust me, we're all going to end up paying. We've got 3.8% inflation. We've got all of that. Look, and that's all coming up. But we've also got an awful lot of stuff going on in the international situation, which is creating problems, energy costs and all of that as well. Where are we in terms of Ukraine? Because you didn't get a chance to come back in after we spoke to Cormac Smith. Putin basically going, don't think I do want a meeting with Donald Trump in a week's time talking about Ukraine, because it turns out, Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister, saying, well, we don't agree to the terms that are set out, which is that we fix our lines of control, basically, the front line where it is right now. They basically want to say, we take a whole load more, basically a quarter more of the Donbass in the east. We've heard so much about over the last 3.5 years.
Yes,
we want to take that territory. Is, as he pointed out, it's heavily fortified, and basically if Putin gets that territory, which he doesn't actually control yet, so why on earth would you go, sure, part of the ceasefire, you get this, but that gives a clear route to Kyiv, the capital. It is untenable for Zelensky to agree to that. He will never agree to it. We can never allow him to agree to it. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It should come as no surprise that President Putin has changed the goalposts and said he wanted more. And who's to say that he would stop at the Donbass region? It's on its way to Kyiv. You can see where that's going, and you can see why everybody in Europe is actually quite frightened of how far that boundary is going to go. What Cormac Smith said, your previous guest, was quite interesting about Putin was only really interested when Tomahawk missiles were on the negotiating table. As soon as they were taken off, his interest went.
What do you make of Donald Trump, though, sort of changing his tune almost on a whim? It's very... He's so sound on Israel, but he's so unsound on when it comes to Ukraine and Putin. I
think he doesn't really understand the person that he's dealing with, who isn't like Zelensky, who he could bully a little bit, and now he's got they have a working relationship. He got on with Netanyahu because he was able to shout and point and say, this is how we're going to do it. Putin, on the other hand, just says, I'm not interested in what you think. I'm going to do what I think.
Putin is clearly the person. He's the alpha in that relationship.
Absolutely,
and you get this feeling that Donald Trump kind of almost admires him.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. There is much to admire. I always say to people, say, "Oh, Nigel Farage admires Putin." No, he said, you as a politician, it's like if you're a massive Remainer, if you don't admire the fact that Nigel Farage had played such a key role in Brexit, you don't get. We're not talking about liking someone, agreeing with someone, supporting someone. Just simply saying, I mean, if you don't admire Vladimir Putin's ability to twist Donald Trump and every other world leader around his little finger, I mean, you're not paying attention. The man is incredible. I mean, he is wily, he is clever, but he is playing Donald Trump like a fiddle.
He is. I mean, this is a man who is incredibly good at politics. Whether you like him or loathe him, he is president for ever.
You don't
basically
survive that long in Russian politics.
You
otherwise.
don't, and 96% of people agreed with him, apparently, on polling day. But you have to admire that, and you have to admire the fact that he can just turn around and say, do you know what, I don't want a phone call with you, Donald Trump, when everybody else is begging for a phone call with Donald Trump. And
the utter ruthlessness. I mean, look, he is quite happy to send his own young men to the front line as cannon fodder. He cares not a jot for human life other than his own. I doubt he even cares about his own family. I think he's absolutely, properly, genuinely a psychopath in every conceivable meaning of that sense, and he's going to be quite happy to throw his own people under the on the treadmill of death, and he certainly doesn't care about the people of Ukraine or indeed us. No. My main thing is that some Russian weapons, some Russian sites were attacked using British weapons over the last 24 hours. We are at war with Russia. Whether we have troops on the ground, we are at war with Russia. Russia is at war with us. We don't have a choice about it. It's not about being a warmonger. We didn't start this war. Vladimir Putin did. Anyone who says that he was forced on, you need to get off the internet, and you need to start reading some people who know what they're talking about, as opposed to idiots on X who think they know what they're talking about. They really, really don't. And I don't think we've got a choice. But what do you make of British troops being deployed to Israel? I mean, we're talking about a very small number. But basically to monitor the Gaza ceasefire, this is a request from the US.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, you look at it and you think, as long as we are only there in support to have an oversight, then I think that is absolutely fine. I would support Israel until the end of time with that. I think if it crosses any further and you start going into war zones and you start looking like you're boots on the ground,
you're in different territory.
You are in different territory, and I don't think we need to be part of that. I've
got to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure the IDF can manage things on their own, but they just need to have the international support. And again, that's where we are. Way too many people getting their information. I'm amazed by how many people I know who have really strong views on Israel and Gaza who don't know some absolutely incontrovertible black and white facts about what's going on there. And I really think we're going to have to sort of have proper, like, literally sit down with groups of people who go, oh, it's awful genocide.
I just don't think they'll learn, though.
I know. I think the ones who march, they're gone. They're just we've lost them. But I think the vast majority of people who've just unfortunately been subjected to the BBC and ITV and Sky News for the last year or two, I think they can be saved. And again, you can have your view either way. That's fine. But your view needs to be based on facts.
Yes.
It needs to be based on facts. And if it's not based on facts, it's not a worthwhile opinion. And I don't think anyone should want to have they think they know facts, but if you actually go, no, I can prove to you incontrovertibly that is not true.
They don't like it when you come back with actual proof, though, do they? Because it blows apart their argument.
But of course, I do get paid 7,000 shekels, or is it dollars, or is it pounds, for every single time I speak about this. So
that's true.
Again, I don't know why I'm still at work, because I'm that rich now after all those posts on X. There we are. Again, I still have a preference, as my accountant does, for it to be in pounds. It's a better exchange rate. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
What is the exchange rate of a shekel these days?
Not very good, apparently. No, I don't know. I mean, I remember looking up to make a point about how, which is it? If people are going to say I'm being paid money, I'd like to know what currency. I'm just saying, it's obscene. It's obscene that people claim that. It really is. Anyway, lots more to talk about. I want to hear from you on all the topics we're talking about, but particularly, I think, on the grooming gangs. That is where we really are today. Grooming gangs inquiry in chaos. Hasn't got a remit, hasn't got a chair. 3 victims have resigned. We've got a Home Office minister being accused of lying and basically proved to have lied about a grooming victim. Where does it go from here? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you want to happen? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
a miracle to...
Do you think people expressing these views are a risk to patients?
I think you know what, we're going to see what the legal process is and whether this person's deemed to have broken the law. But I think when you see some of the language that's being used there, is that somebody who we want to be entrusting to support people of any faith or religion or denomination? I don't think it is. I don't think that you could assume that someone will get the same treatment if they happen to be Jewish from somebody who espouses views like that. So I think there is a concern. I think we're going to see where the police come to with their investigation and then take it from there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls, all on the grooming gangs this morning, I have to say. Derek is on the line in Manchester. Derek, hello, what do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Yeah, basically, anyone that is expecting this inquiry into the grooming gangs, you might as well go and try and plait sawdust, because it's just not going to happen. It's as simple as that. The top and bottom of it is we've got most of the councils that were involved in the grooming scandal were Labour-run councils. Yep. But that doesn't matter, because the whole system from top police officers who were put in those positions straight out of university, judges, etc., they're all left-leaning. And anyone in the left-leaning establishment is not gonna. It's like voting for turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? I mean, your problem is if you go back in time, look to people like Harriet Harman, Patricia Hewitt. Oh. I mean, many years ago, they were defending a group called the Paedophile Information Exchange. Yep. They were trying to get the law changed to make it legal for sex with an 11-year-old child, for God's sake. Yep.
No, I mean, that is, I'm sorry, that is true. It's all on paper, it's on record, it's not hearsay. And again, it's genuinely terrifying. Yes. That's the worry, isn't it? You need to have someone who's to be a judge, to be a senior figure, to be considered for this inquiry, you kind of have to be establishment. But if you're establishment, well, you're part of the problem. You need someone with a track record who speaks truth to power. Because you can remember also there's an element where the chairing of the inquiry's personal reputation rests on this. It's like, we've got the COVID inquiry. We're going to talk about that up next with Carl Hennigan in a couple of moments. And look, that chair's just got no credibility just from the things she said and the questions she's asking and the remit of the inquiry. Just got no credibility whatsoever.
Another problem, Julia, and what you even on this show, you keep saying that this has been going on for a decade. It's not. I remember watching a court case. I'm going back now in 2006.
I've said 20 years. No, we know at least 20 years.
No, well, at the time, if you go back, it was the chairman of the British National Party, Nick Griffin. He was put on trial for actually exposing this all those years ago, and he was called a racist for exposing it.
I don't remember the details of any of that. I'm sure there would have been other things that Nick Griffin would have done, but I don't know the ins and outs of that. No, people have been talking about this. Maggie Oliver, other people have been talking about this for a very, very long time. But it was around 2011, 2012 when it got into the national media, when people were going, Andrew Norfolk at the Times, who sadly died since, we're talking about this. But yeah, it's been going on for 20 years. It's still going on today. I'm
going back to 2006 as far as that was. That part of it was.
Yeah, 20 years. That's my saying. I've never once said it's been going on for 10 years. Never once. I've never once said that. I know it's been going on for longer.
An apology after all these years.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Derek, thank you for that. I appreciate that. You made a lot of very fair points. Tarquin is in London, wants to have his say. Hello, Tarquin.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
Good, thank you. What do you want to say?
Where do we start with this? I want to see the big six head this. You're number one, Maggie Oliver, Kate Hoey. Those are the three women. Three guys would be Andrew Bridgen, former MP, and Rupert Lowe, and then, of course, the great John Wedger, former detective. John Wedger.
That's who you want to cover this.
He knows where the bodies are on this. So we need to get these guys. You, and if you would volunteer, it's entirely up to you.
Oh, I said the other day I'd volunteer. Yeah. I just don't think I'd be in you. I mean, Maggie Oliver, I'd put it. I mean, I don't want someone who's neutral between the grooming gangs and the victims. Yeah. I want somebody who's on the side of the victims.
But what we need is somebody who speaks for the voice of the, like, as far as you can, have the general common common sense of the British decent public, and that you're as good an advocate as anybody, Julia, if you want to. But that's a side issue. I think the point is here is this totally undermines. This is a systemic undermining of our total British system as we've known it since the Act of Union, and I think it's and before probably. It's nauseous to think that any of our total jurisprudence and jurisdiction has been totally ridden roughshod by left-leaning Fabians and communists and common purpose advocates who are totally destroying any possibility of the blob, you see, being infiltrated with all of this disgusting cancer. We're never going to get to the bottom of it unless we have, when there's on day one of the next Reform government, and I really sincerely hope for the sake of God's justice that we get it, a total repeal bill of all the bad laws we've had since 97 onwards.
Oh, I'd love to see that. They're going to have a lot of work to do. They really are. Tarquin, we'll have to leave it there, but you covered a lot of ground there, Claire.
Certainly did, and I agree. Maggie Oliver and you, I think, would be some panel.
Just Maggie. I'm going just Maggie. She knows what she's doing. She understands the law.
She does. She's excellent.
But that's the key thing. It's going to have to be somebody who people recognise and accept as someone who, again, for me, it's more about their willingness and ability and their track record of basically going, I don't care who I upset, I'm telling it like it is. And that's quite a small number of people, sadly. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Do keep your calls coming in. Any suggestions who it should be? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, we're going to be talking about another inquiry going on for years, not really getting anywhere to any truth, because it's more concerned normally you with like who said what on WhatsApp as opposed to the damage that's actually been done to our society. Well, that's of course the COVID inquiry. And they heard from Boris Johnson yesterday. My blood boiled all day about it. Going to talk to Carl Hennigan to find out what he thinks about it up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's go straight to talk about, well, I've gone from the grooming gangs inquiry that isn't actually doing any inquiring to the COVID inquiry that's not doing a very good job either. And as many expecting will be a complete whitewash. Well, they've heard from the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, last week, well, former Education Secretary, about what happened in terms of children, because this is what they're looking at right now, the impact on children, on education of the COVID policies. And earlier this week, we heard from Sir Chris Whitty, the then and still remains Chief Medical Officer. And yesterday we heard from the Prime Minister, as was at the time Boris Johnson, justifying what actually happened under the COVID policies. And he says, well, basically children really were thrown under the bus and they basically took the biggest hit to save society. But should they have done? Let's talk to Carl Hennigan. He's Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
I've got to be honest with you, and I did let rip at one point on the show yesterday. Blood was boiling just watching Boris Johnson defending himself. The whole spiel he's got, which is the, oh, rub my hair, oh, I didn't want to do anything, but I had to. We didn't know then what we know now. None of that's true, is it?
Yeah, I just find the whole scenario quite ridiculous now. Just to say, up till March this year, estimates £130 million the inquiry cost, and my current estimate is about £1 million a week. So by April 26, that'll be 180 million. This could cost £300 million. I thought money was tight, but you're right. We've got people like Sir Chris Whitty, all these people are sirs, lords. Nobody seems to get any problems here. It's all good for them. Said we could have been more liberal with children's play. Boris was saying, oh, I think possibly we probably did go too far, he said. Now, look, I'm
going to lose it again.
There's something seriously wrong here. How come these people in power could use modelers to see the future, but they can't use common sense to see the obvious? And the obvious is they went too far. If they all got up and said, look, we're really sorry, we panicked. In the midst of this, I nearly died and I feared for my life and panicked even more. All of my advisors were in one direction, and that was more harder lockdowns, and I had no way out. In doing so, however, we've learnt something. Lockdowns don't work, masks don't work, school closures don't work. Actually, we do have some useful information. And we also attack your civil liberties. We went after journalists like yourself, Julia.
And you.
MPs. And we're never going to do the same ever again. That's the end of the inquiry this week. Thank you very much. We'll close it up. We can save at least £100 million from this point on.
I would love it if they do that, but they simply won't. You know the one word that never gets mentioned in this inquiry? Sweden. We're constantly told we didn't have the evidence at the time. I've seen social media response to even to what I said on air about this yesterday. About I basically said you don't hate Boris Johnson enough, because it's the self-justification as well. He was weak and hopeless, and he didn't actually he went along. The media were pressuring. Well, what happened was there was propaganda, and it was coming out from China, and there was stuff online and social media pressuring people in the West to do this. There was propaganda for making the public very, very scared. The government joined in, telling us basically we're all going to die, and then we had the media demanding lockdowns and action, and then they basically gave into it. But I still remember that couple of press conferences that were given by Boris Johnson with Patrick Vance and Chris Whitty, where they did the whole explanation of why they weren't closing schools, because it really wouldn't make much of a difference but would do a lot of damage, why there was evidence not to lock down, why they were doing this, why they were doing that, and even explaining when they did announce the first lockdown that it was, remember, it was flattening the curve, the Mexican hat, wasn't it, the sombrero, and it's only because we're going to be overwhelmed in this particular period. Now, as it was, that wouldn't have happened. We know from the data the infections were already going down. But even after that, and then they sort of couldn't get out of it, because politically they didn't want people to hate them, and a lot of people were enjoying lockdown and kind of enjoying the frisson. And people like me went along with it because I thought, because they'd been honest beforehand and been sensible, that they had new evidence. They didn't have any new evidence. They had Neil Ferguson, who briefly stopped going on his bike to shag his mistress to do a bit more computer modelling that was completely as useless as all other computer modelling he'd done, and apparently we were all going to die. That was a lie. The whole time, Sweden was not locked down. No child under the age of 16 missed a day of school. Their health service wasn't shut down. Their economy wasn't shut down. Their cafes and restaurants stayed open. And that was happening, and people watching it. And we know the results. Sweden had fewer COVID deaths, fewer other deaths. Their economy is not trashed. Their children's mental and physical health and education isn't trashed. The evidence is impossible to deny, but most people in government still think they did the right thing.
You forgot to mention Dominic Cummings' trip to Barnard Castle to test his eyesight out.
Don't.
But you're dead right. So the CMO, this is, I find, irrational, said, well, we had to close them because there'd be 1,000 more deaths and infections. Yet Sweden negates all of those arguments because they made the choice to keep preschools open, primary schools and lower secondary schools open. About 1.8 million pupils attended school in person. That's 1/5 of their population. The studies, what did they find? They found out later that they did have the teachers had slightly higher risk of infection in 2020 than the general population, but not higher than healthcare. But importantly, they showed child to adult transmission was relatively low and large outbreaks among primary school pupils were rare. Therefore, it negates all of these people who are supposed to be in the advisory positions. Chief medical officer uses his opinion. His opinion said, oh, well, we shouldn't have had a rule of 6. We should have had 3 households. I'm like, why not 4 flats? It's like a game for these people.
And we know a lot of this stuff was just like there was no medical evidence, and that's why different countries had different rules. Was it 2 meters, 6 feet, whatever? It wasn't just they had different ways of measuring it. They literally plucked this stuff from thin air and then went, yeah, we'll just make that the rule.
And that's exactly what they're still doing. And in effect, if you look at it, they're going basically with school closures. We had no plans. We just changed our mind. If you look at Boris Johnson in 2021, he was going, schools are going back. They're open. It's time to get back to school. 48 hours later, they're closed again. So this is the people who flip-flop because basically they have not a clue what they're doing.
But that's why we have
anxious.
That's the whole point of having pre-pandemic planning, which we had. And lots of people say that Sweden was an outlier. Again, lots of people will look at the stats, go, oh, look, Sweden had a whole load of extra COVID deaths in 2020. But, you know, over the period, they had fewer even than their fellow Nordic countries because they kept things open. But also, I mean, they made some of the same mistakes we did about care homes and the like. Yeah. But the crucial thing is, though, when you've got that comparison. But people say, well, Sweden was an outlier. No, Sweden was the only country that followed World Health Organization and all international pre-pandemic planning. They stuck to the plan and it saved lives and it saved the economy. And it also stuck to the basis of making all public policy, which is a cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of doing this? What is the benefit? And the reality was they knew that the costs were going to be huge of what they did, not just economically, the debt we're in right now, all the financial problems we have right now, COVID. That's what it's down to. The impact on education. We've still got hundreds of thousands of children who don't go to school regularly. We've got 100,000 children with mental health problems, physical health problems. We've got kids arriving at school who, you know, don't even know how to speak properly because, you know, at home. You name it. Our health service is still not back up to speed because they basically shut it down for 6 months. No other country did that. There are so many things that they made decisions about, which they must have known would have happened because a basic cost benefit analysis, and we've always known now since there was no cost benefit analysis, and there should be no policy ever that is so great and impacts our civil liberties, our economy, our health and everything else, where no one has even gone, I wonder what the downsize might be, Carl.
So, look, this last 60 seconds and the point I'm going to make on the back of yours and the cost-benefit analysis, get your people to send this to the inquiry because this is hugely important. We now have the data about you've closed schools and all the catastrophic harms it's caused, not just about educational problems, mental health, all sorts of issues that children are still dealing with today. You can then now do a cost-benefit analysis on what that means, and I can tell you it's never going to meet a threshold that you can close schools ever again. Now, let's put it this way. You don't need to, if you had a pandemic where children were dying, you wouldn't need marketing and a mandate because parents would just say, I'm sorry, I'm not taking them to school until we sort this out. You don't need the government to come in and tell you then because we're good at judging risk. But you're dead right. We didn't have a cost-benefit analysis then. But we definitely can generate one now, and the inquiry can do that and then look at the threshold and say, oh dear, this is hugely costly to children, and they're still paying the price.
Absolutely, and there's no doubt at all as well, even Boris Johnson acknowledged this, effectively, you know, it was children paying a huge price, he said, to protect the rest of society. Any society where you expect children to pay the price to keep 80, with all due respect, I don't mean to be harsh, but 80 and 90-year-olds alive for an extra 2 months, I'm sorry, I think that's obscene, and it's not the way certainly everyone I know of that age thinks it should have happened. Carl Hennigan, you've been a fantastic advocate on this, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford. Thank you as always. Claire Pissell, I mean, this is the thing, we've got the data, and no one's acknowledging the data.
No, I know, and I think they just want to bury their heads in the sand because they don't want to admit that perhaps they were wrong on
and the
this.
media don't want to admit it because they cheered it all on.
Absolutely.
They were queuing up. Oh, please, Prime Minister, are you going to lock down sooner and longer? Please, Prime Minister.
Yeah,
That's
why
what
haven't
they
you
did.
locked down? Why haven't you got these people? Yeah,
should be ashamed of themselves.
But they're never
really
going
should.
to be.
The biggest story of your lifetime. You blew it, guys. You blew it. 11:48 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about just how many anti-Semitic doctors are there working in the NHS? Well, one of them, apparently no longer working in the NHS but still has a licence so far, has been arrested for celebrating the Hamas October the 7th attack. We're going to talk about that with Gideon Folter, Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Up next, this is Talk.
It's devastating to think that these people who've been through what they've been through are now quitting the panel because they feel they're being let down. You know, they've talked about controlling and condescending language used towards them. They've talked about the fact that it's, political interference and skullduggery. Well, we can't go on like this. We need that proper inquiry. We need a national statutory judge-led inquiry with all the bells and whistles and able to hold people to account properly. I mean, we even had debate about whether the councils who are being questioned in this place should have the right to determine what goes on and have a hand in governing such inquiries.
Do you think people
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side? This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:51 is the time. This is Talk. Let's talk right now about, just how much anti-Semitism is there in this country, and in particular in the NHS, with the arrest yesterday of Dr. Rami Al-Adwan, a junior medic training to be a trauma and orthopaedic surgeon, who was arrested after appearing to celebrate the Hamas attacks on October the 7th. She's been arrested on suspicion of stirring up racial hatred for, a huge number of posts and speeches she has given. Well, let's talk about this with Gideon Folter. He's Chief Executive at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Good morning to you, Gideon.
Morning, Julia.
Look, obviously no charges have been brought against this doctor, but I mean, certainly she's been very prominent online. Some quite extraordinary statements that she's made. Talk us through what she has done and said that may well have led to her arrest.
I mean, her output has been absolutely prolific. She said that 90% of Jews on Earth are genocidal. She's posted a picture of the chief rabbi with the caption "Rabbi Genocide." She said that the Royal Free Hospital is a cesspit of Jewish supremacy, and so on and so forth.
This is a London hospital in a Jewish area where I believe she used to work.
Absolutely. And then that goes on. But she also goes into the Middle East. So she posts things like Allahu Akbar, glory to the Palestinian armed resistance, emphasis on armed there. She posted a picture of a Hamas gunman, said Al-Qassam a day keeps the Zeds locked away. Al-Qassam is obviously a terrorist group within Palestinian terrorist organizations, and then you've also got the Zeds. Who are the Zeds that she wants to keep locked away?
Zionists, yeah. But she's also posted, I remember, a picture with of celebrating a bulldozer basically taking out the fence between Gaza and Israel on October the 7th, and Hamas fighters crossing and basically celebrating that and referring to it as a good. I mean, I can't remember her exact words, but very much thinking it was a good day. I mean, the evidence has been mounting up. Now, she's claimed recently that she's banned from shows like mine because we don't want to hear the truth. Of course, I invited her publicly and privately. Somehow, even though she's seen the messages, she's replied to them, somehow chose never to actually come on the show because I'm happy to take on all comers, as you know. But she's not the only doctor who has been accused of anti-Semitism. We've had a whole raft of doctors who have said the most, I think, quite frankly, extraordinary things who are currently working in the NHS.
I mean, look, I had an experience where I went to the doctor, and the nurse who admitted me at the medical centre was wearing a badge with a fist on it, draped in the Palestinian colours.
As you do to work, yes.
As you do to work, but we are paying for a national health service where people are turning up to work, spouting all sorts of anti-Semitic views, and the cases that come into us. This Dr. Al-Adwan is just one of a plethora of cases coming through. She is the tip of the iceberg. We've got an NHS now, which has got an awful lot of extremists in it. And British people, when we put ourselves in the care of the NHS, we are essentially making ourselves vulnerable to the state. We are saying to the state, look after us. We're relying on you. Yeah. We're trusting you.
I have seen posts from people who say, when their husband's an elderly man was in hospital, deliberately concealing the fact that he was Jewish because he was scared that he wouldn't get the best treatment. That is an extraordinary and awful thing. And again, for anybody, whether they were black, Asian, white, whatever, thinking they might get different treatment because that is outrageous. But also, I just think it's outrageous. Why is someone at work, certainly in the public sector, in a front-facing scenario, why are you putting your policy? What the hell has what's going on in Gaza got to do with you working, stitching someone up or seeing a patient? It's got nothing. There's no place there. I've got to be honest with you. I don't want to see rainbow lanyards, Black Lives Matter, protests. Can you just come to work and not have anything? Like, I've got a job where I've worn yellow ribbon for bring the hostages home. I don't think that's particularly controversial. Apparently, it is to some people. But as a general, that's because my job is to be give my views. But if you're paid by the public sector, I don't want to hear your political views in the workplace.
Absolutely, and the NHS of all places, doctors swear a Hippocratic oath. They should be people who are absolutely defending people's lives, trying to save lives. They should not be posting things like Allahu Akbar, glory to the Palestinian armed resistance. For goodness sake, they should not be posting pictures of gunmen from Hamas. So when we've got an NHS where not only is that happening, but what's crucial here is that the General Medical Council started to investigate. It went up to the Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service, and the MPTS, as it's known, said, yeah, you know what? It's fine for her to continue practicing while she's under investigation. We're not going to suspend her license or anything of that nature. And now we've got a situation where, having made that decision, the Met Police, which, let's face it, is not exactly the best at picking up anti-Semitism, is it? And the Met Police have gone in, and I should stress, she has not been charged yet. She's simply being
she's been under arrest. Yeah,
been under arrest. But the Met Police has felt that they have sufficient grounds to arrest her for an incitement to racial hatred charge, which is really serious.
Oh, absolutely.
And meanwhile, the medical regulators in this country think, yeah, that's someone who should absolutely continue being.
Well, yeah, indeed. We know she's got another hearing coming up, and she'd already been clear by the GMC, basic freedom of speech. Again, I believe in freedom of speech, but not if you're actually, basically, inciting racial hatred and the like, and violence. Can I ask you very, very, very briefly? Metropolitan Police have been accused of lying over the arrest of a Jewish lawyer, because he alleged it was because he was antagonising pro-Palestinian protesters simply by wearing a Star of David. And Scotland Yard basically said, no, that's not why he was arrested. Just very briefly, what's the state of play there?
Yeah, look, the Met Police have essentially become bodyguards for these hate marches. If they see a Jew that they don't like the look of, they can make a fuss and know that the Met will remove them. And they're going through the exact same playbook as they did with me when they threatened to arrest me for being quite openly Jewish. They lied about it straight away and said that I'd been my presence was provocative and all of that. They're doing the same thing with this man who's wearing a Star of David necklace.
If being Jewish or supporting Israel is provocative to people, and that therefore violence may ensue, maybe the people who are being provoked, in inverted commas, are the problem and should not be free to march on our streets, because I don't feel the need to go and violently attack someone who has a different view from me or ethnicity or religious views. And if you do feel that, yeah, maybe you're the problem. Gideon Folter, appreciate you joining us, Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Thank you for that. You can hear the music. We're coming up to the top of the hour. And that also means we're going to be hearing from PMQs. Yes, the Prime Minister facing questions from numerous MPs. We'll be taking questions from Kemi Badenoch. What will she talk about? I'm thinking likely the grooming gang scandal. If she's got any sense, that's what she'll ask about. Peter Cobb will be here, and so will Claire Pearsall giving their verdict. Do stay tuned, because this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, Prime Minister's Questions has just started. We're going live to that as soon as Kemi Badenoch stands on her feet for her first question. Usually be preambles beforehand, and as soon as we do know when you know that the leader of the opposition is standing up, we will go straight to it. Joining me for a little bit of analysis of what's going on at PMQs will be not just Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor, who joins me every Wednesday, but also joining us also every Wednesday now, talk presenter and political knowledge bank, Peter Cardwell.
Never recalled that before.
No, I usually have something else rhyming with that. Peter Cardwell is here as well. I mean, last week got really, really, really feisty.
Certainly did.
This week, I mean, if you had to put money on it, you'd go with grooming gangs, wouldn't you?
Yes, definitely, especially as inflation hasn't moved, still at 3.8%. Grooming gangs, big scandal. Fourth survivor, there's only one person left.
Is there a fourth person now?
A fourth person has now said that they are leaving the panel, the fourth victim. We're also in a situation where they're down to one person who will be is a candidate to be the
And this is going to be a real issue. Again, the Prime Minister can, of course, always throw back. You know, Claire, he can say, well, you know, where was the grooming gang inquiry when you were in charge? Because a lot of this has happened under the Tory watch.
Yes, yeah, I mean, he can quite happily say that. But unfortunately, because he made such a big thing out of having an inquiry after telling everybody they were right-wing, he needs to do it.
Unfortunately for Labour, the music stopped. And they were left holding the hot potato, and it certainly is a hot potato, isn't it? And there's no doubt at all that we are in very difficult circumstances for that grooming gang inquiry, because it just simply does not look like 4 months in, drag kicking and screaming to actually looking at the screen, check I don't miss anything from the PMQs, drag kicking and screaming to announcing one. Prime Minister said, look, only a year ago, anyone wanting a grooming gang national inquiry was a racist or far right.
That's right.
Then he basically announced one. 4 months on, no chair, no remit, 4 now victims, survivors now basically saying we don't trust this. This is basically a cover-up and it's toxic. I mean, this is seriously damaging for a man who, he was the former director of public prosecutions.
Yeah, he always talks about his role in prosecuting people who perpetrated these crimes.
Yep.
It's interesting from this perspective as well with the Alexis J report, the previous report that took 7 years. So that there are only 2 of the 20 recommendations that are actually even being implemented at the moment. So there's a lot of criticism from survivors on that as well.
Yeah, what's the point of even having an inquiry? I mean, Claire, we've been listening to our calls today. They go, we want blood, we want people, we want heads to roll, we want the gangs prosecuted more, but we also, crucially, we want people who covered it up and allowed it to happen, and in some ways allowed it to happen. Apologies, I've just been told Kemi Badenoch is on her feet. Let's have a watch and a listen.
First of all, can I pay tribute to the former Conservative MP Oliver Colville, who has very sadly passed away after a long illness. Colleagues will remember him for his love of cricket and, of course, hedgehogs. He will be very much missed. Mr. Speaker, 4 victims on the Rape Gang Survivors panel have resigned. And they've resigned because they've lost all confidence in the government's inquiry. So I'm giving my first question to one of them, to Fiona. She said, being dismissed and contradicted by a minister when you're telling the truth takes you right back to that feeling of not being believed all over again. Fiona's question is simple. What's the point in speaking up if we're just going to be called liars?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for raising that on behalf of Fiona, and let me give Fiona and the House my answer, Mr. Speaker, because the grooming scandal was one of the worst scandals of our time. Women and girls were abused and exploited by predatory gangs of men, and survivors have been ignored for many years, including by the state that, of course, is supposed to protect them. My vow to Fiona and them is that this national inquiry will change that. I do acknowledge that in recent days some members, including Fiona, have decided to step away from the panel. I say this, Mr. Speaker, should they wish to return, the door will always be open. But even if they do not, we owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry. I can tell the House today, Mr. Speaker, that Dame Louise Casey will now support the work of the inquiry and it will get to the truth. Injustice will have no place to hide.
Mr. Speaker, I doubt she'll be satisfied with that answer. He says that they could return to the panel if they wish to. Why would they do that? The government has been engaged in a briefing war against survivors. Elizabeth.
It's absolutely disgraceful.
Oh, really? They say shame. Why don't they listen to what Elizabeth had to say? Why don't they listen to what Elizabeth had to say? Elizabeth, who was abused in Rotherham from the age of 14, had this to say, and I quote, "The government has created a toxic environment for survivors." They were looking for answers from the Prime Minister, and what they've heard is Labour MPs saying shame at their words. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Safeguarding Minister said Elizabeth was wrong. Who should we believe? The Prime Minister's Safeguarding Minister or Elizabeth?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me put on record my respect for all of the survivors who've been through the most awful ordeals. And I want to thank those that have been involved so far for the work in the process. What we're trying to do is to get this right. And have an inquiry with survivors at the heart. As the Safeguarding Minister told the House yesterday, that's obviously not easy. They've all come with difficult experiences. There are a wide range of views, understandably, and every survivor does bring their own painful experience to this. The survivors met the prospective chairs this week, and we want to have them to have the chance to engage. I want survivors to be at the heart of this. I want an inquiry that can get to the truth. These are the hard yards, I accept that, but I want to press on and get this right.
Mr. Speaker, he says that he wants survivors to be at the heart of this, but in his first PMQs this year, he said we did not need a national inquiry. And when he did, all of these MPs cheered. They were nodding their heads, including the Safeguarding Minister. They voted against the national inquiry 3 times. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They voted against the national inquiry.
All of you do.
They voted against the national inquiry 3 times, so the victims don't believe them. They can say no as much as they like. It is on the record. They don't like it, but it's true. Now, one of the victims has quit. Contrary to what the Prime Minister's just said and what the Home Secretary wrote this morning, they believe that the inquiry will downplay the racial and religious motivations behind their abuse. Aren't the victims right when they call it a cover-up?
Prime Minister.
Well, let me reassure the victims and the House that the scope of the inquiry will not be diluted, and we won't shy away from cultural or religious issues. And Mr. Speaker, it was me that commissioned Baroness Casey in the first place, who gave me her recommendation in relation to a national inquiry, and we have, in the 4 months since then, finalised the panel and trying to get the leadership of this inquiry right, with survivors at the heart. Mr. Speaker, in that period, we have also reopened 1,200 historic closed cases. I have long argued, Mr. Speaker, that the criminal route where it can be pursued is the right route for perpetrators. We've introduced mandatory reporting of child sex abuse. I happen to think that is a vital safeguard. I've been campaigning for that for over a decade. I asked the last government to introduce it, and that fell on deaf ears. And that mandatory reporting of child sex abuse is something each and every one of them voted against earlier this year. And we've given victims and survivors the power to seek an independent review of their cases. But, Mr. Speaker, in relation to this inquiry, I want to go as fast as we can to get the justice that is deserved. I want to ensure survivors are involved in that, and we're balancing the two to get this right, and I'll continue to do so.
Mr. Speaker, he's talking about mandatory reporting. I will remind him what Fiona asked. What is the point if the victims aren't going to be believed? What would be the point of mandatory reporting? All of this is happening now. All he's saying is because 4 of those victims resigned from the survivors panel. If they hadn't done that, they would have continued with the watering down, which we all know that they were carrying out. So yes, the victims are right to be worried. He also talked about looking for a chair. It has been 10 months since we first called for a national inquiry. 10 months. It is shocking that they still do not have a chair. One of the final 2 candidates, Mr. Speaker, has pulled out, leaving a former police officer that the victims don't want. What they do want is a judge. They deserve a judge. So, Mr. Speaker, we are talking now. We are talking about the industrial-scale rape of women and girls. Unlike most of the inquiries going on, why is it that this inquiry doesn't deserve a judge?
Prime Minister. Can I answer that? It's a serious point, Mr. Speaker, because whether it should be judge-led was looked at by Louise Casey, and she decided against that for a reason, and her reasons were twofold. I'll spell them out. The first was the speed with which we could do this, and it would have been... They asked the question, and the first was the speed with which we could do this. The second is really important, and that is that at the same time as the inquiry, I was absolutely determined that criminal investigations would go on at the same time. One of the problems that judge-led inquiries run into, I've seen and experienced this myself, is that they're often held back until the end of the criminal investigations. And I was determined that we'd be able to run the 2 together. And it's because of that, Mr. Speaker, that we've been able to reopen 1,200 historic cases at the same time. And Mr. Speaker, she asks, what's the point of mandatory reporting that she voted against? I don't think she understands how it works. This, Mr. Speaker, is mandatory reporting of those that have had allegations made to them, and there's clear enough evidence they've then not passed that on. That is a fundamental problem in the system. That is why we've changed the law. They should hang their heads in shame for having voted against that vital protection.
What he should hang his head in shame in is calling this a far-right bandwagon when we first raised this issue. The deputy leader, the future deputy leader, we all know who's going to win, called this a dog whistle. What we need to think about right now, Mr. Speaker, is the victims. It is the survivors. I spoke to one of them yesterday. Let's remember, these are victims who waived their anonymity, an incredibly difficult thing to do. And they believe that the safeguarding minister has lied to them and about them. One of the survivors has said, and I quote, "Jess Phillips needs to be removed because I don't think her conduct during this has been acceptable for the position that she holds." That is, those aren't my words. Those are the words of a survivor. It is a shame that Labour MPs are drowning that out. The member for Birmingham Yardley has clearly lost the confidence of the victims. Does she still have the confidence of the Prime Minister?
Can I just say, Prime Minister, even if we are quoting somebody else, we shouldn't quote it because it's a direct allegation against a member of this House. So I'm sure that that's not what was intended, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I respect the views of all the survivors, and there are different views. I accept that. But the safeguarding minister, I think, has probably more experience than any other person in this House in dealing with violence against women and girls. Alongside her will be Louise Casey. These 2 individuals, Mr. Speaker, have spent decades standing up for those who have been abused and sexually exploited. And I absolutely think they're the right people to take this forward.
Mr. Speaker, she doesn't have more experience than the survivors. The fact is, just a few weeks ago, he was standing there telling us he had full confidence in the best friend of a convicted paedophile. So it is no surprise that people have no confidence in what he is saying. The victims have said that she should be sacked. We on this side of the House believe that she should be sacked because this is about Labour failure. Labour never wanted this inquiry. We demanded it. It has been Labour-run councils, Trafford, Bradford, Blackpool, that tried to suppress the truth. It is Labour ministers attacking the victims. We're standing up for them. And how is it, Mr. Speaker, How is it that whether it is rape or Chinese espionage, when he's in a position to do something about it, it's always someone else's fault?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my priorities are listening to and standing up for the survivors. That's why we're doing the work on the inquiry. That's why we've reopened the criminal cases, why we brought in mandatory reporting. But I would gently remind them they had 14 years in office. They barely mentioned this issue. And where there were inquiries, they failed to act on them. We have done more in the time we've been in office than they did in 14 long years.
Right, well, what a heated exchange there between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Let me come to you first, Peter Carboyle, listening to that. I mean, as we predicted, Kemi Badenoch went all 6 questions on the grooming gang scandal. I'm saying she landed a lot of punches.
3 out of 3 there. Listen, I am not a Kemi Badenoch fan per se, but her speech at Conservative Party conference and the last 2 PMQs have been excellent. I thought the Prime Minister struck exactly the wrong tone there. I think he was patronising. He said, oh, she doesn't quite understand mandatory reporting. I'm a lawyer. He does talk down to her. I mean,
you can have lots of criticism of Kemi Badenoch. The woman ain't thick.
Yeah, and he was talking down to her quite a lot about things that are easy to understand. Mandatory referral, the clues in the question. We got some information there as well. Louise Casey is going to be supporting
Back involved with this.
Back involved with this.
Again, we mentioned her on the show yesterday. She's someone I think everyone involved trusts. She is absolutely no nonsense, tell it like it is on everything she's been involved in.
You're absolutely right, and possibly the next Cabinet Secretary if the rumours about Chris Wormold, the current Cabinet Secretary, are to be believed. Interestingly, on the judge point, I mean, there were just guffaws when he said, we're not appointing a judge to this because of the speed. It's been 16 months that they've been in power. It's been 10 months since the Conservatives have pressed for this. It's been 4 months since they announced it. It's not a speedy thing at all. And also the criticism of Jess Phillips there. Previously, St Jess, who was before the election someone who was campaigning for victims. Now she's gone from hero to zero. So many different victims losing their confidence in her. Keir Starmer clearly still has confidence in her, but for how long?
Yeah, well, again, it was a fair point, wasn't it, Clippers? We all smirked at this when Kemi Badenoch said, well, a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister had full confidence in the best friend of a convicted paedophile, meaning, of course, Lord Mandelson and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, what stood out for you? Because Kemi was talking about the 4 victims who've resigned. She was talking. She read out some quotes. She got a bit silly. I mean, I hate ridiculous telling off from the speaker about using the name of Jess Phillips in a quote. But she scored some clear hits there, didn't she?
She did, and I think that was a really good tactic to use by saying these are the words of the victim. This is what this person feels.
You don't know more than her.
Absolutely, and to give that over to the Prime Minister. So I thought that was a really good tactic that she kept going. The one thing that Keir Starmer cannot stand is when he feels rattled, he then goes on the defensive, and he also turns it into something about him. So rather than talking about the safeguarding minister, he said, I am determined. I have been doing this. This is what I think.
Got little phrases. Whenever he says, I'm determined, I always think,
it means that's going to get you
He did have a fair point. His final response, though, you've had 14 years in office. You barely mentioned it. I mean, it's not an unreasonable point. This was all going on. Andrew Norfolk of the Times broke this in terms of the national media. 2012. We were certainly talking about this on air. I remember talking about it when I used to be on a previous station around that time. Certainly talking about it, 26 onwards since Talk Radio launched. I don't know whether it comes up on Talk Sport. I don't know. But I mean, this has been around for a long time. Why are we still talking about this?
Because it is just uncomfortable for politicians. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be uncomfortable. You should be able to look in and say these are victims, these are perpetrators. We need to be able to deal with that in the judicial system. But unfortunately, it became one of those issues that nobody wanted to touch. It always came up around nearer to an election time. Just couldn't do it.
And he did. And there's no doubt, Peter, there was a lot of, the barracking of Kemi Badenoch during that by Labour members, cries of shame, which she picked up on when she was actually quoting Elizabeth, one of the 4 victims, survivors who were stood down. They also, getting lots of muttering about the fact she used the name of Jess Phillips. It's the format in the comments.
Who cares?
You say the minister or we're there for an MP for, and you think, That's what you're bothered by.
The big issue.
That's what you're bothered by, not the mass gang rape of girls.
Well, exactly. Look at what Keir Starmer said. He talked about the men who did this. He didn't say about the Pakistani grooming gangs, the Pakistani men. That is, they were predominantly the people who did this.
He also said this was one of the worst scandals of our time.
It is
It's still going on.
It is continuing. He also said, again patronising, again ridiculous, I want to put on record my respect for the victims. I mean, if you need to say that, if you need to say, oh, by the way, you know, I'm not a misogynist or whatever.
By the way,
you know,
I'm not in favour of gang rape of 13-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought that was a given.
It's kind of implied, Keir. So I just think that he was patronising towards Kemi Baden. I think he was patronising towards the victims as well today.
And fair point, you know, Jess Phillips, you know, basically all the victim, who do we believe? I think we all know who we believe, and again, the paperwork backs up the victim. Basically, the Prime Minister being asked, do you still have full confidence in Jess Phillips? And he did actually dodge quite a lot of the questions, but that's normal, isn't it? Like, come on, I've never known a Prime Minister to give, when they do give straight answers, when there's like a yes or a no, we all go, oh. And you can see the question is always sort of, oh, well, I wasn't expecting that. Now I don't know what to do. But overall, look, the Prime Minister's on a sticky wicket, but he doesn't need to be. Here's the thing: would you not have so much respect for this Prime Minister as a former Director of Public Prosecutions, who, he was there in office when a lot of prosecutions weren't brought. The CPS made decisions go, oh well, you know, she's a drug addict, you know, and an alcoholic. She'd probably have tried prostitute. We won't prosecute the men who raped her and drugged her and gave her the drugs and the alcohol. But he's also someone who, when he was briefed on this, you know, I think it's Nawal Afaz. My brain's gone. Nawaz Afal. I can't remember getting his name wrong. I do apologise.
The senior police officer.
Senior police officer. Yes. You know who I'm talking about. Apologies. Brain fog there. But they did instigate a lot of prosecutions. He could be on really solid ground and go, I don't care if it's Labour councillors who are, I don't care if there are MPs sitting in Parliament now who are implicated. I don't care.
We will go wherever the evidence leads us.
And he could bring that sort of, you know, I was a Director of Public Prosecutions. He could bring that. And instead, this is a cover-up. This is a cover-up by the whole establishment, but it's particularly a cover-up by Labour, of Labour councillors, some of who are now Labour MPs, who've been involved in basically trying to brush this under the carpet because it's all a bit difficult because of community cohesion.
That's right. I mean, he doesn't need to make this a political point whatsoever. All he needs to do is say, this is where the legal system can help, this is what the legal system can do, and this is what I want them to do. And then he would actually start to look like a leader. Then I think people would have more confidence in whichever inquiry chair comes forward.
Exactly. And it is interesting, the Prime Minister saying about the speed, and you mentioned that, Peter, you know, it's been 4 months even since they announced this. But the idea, the difficulty of criminal investigations going on at the same time, we've had that same thing with the Grenfell inquiry. All these criminal investigations delayed. But those are legal decisions. I mean, you know, there are ways of stopping this, but you know, there are still people who will say, well, I'm not going to give proper evidence to this inquiry because I could face charges anyway.
Yes.
And this still comes up. You still have this issue. But why did the charges take so long? Why have we got such a backlog in the criminal justice system that this stuff takes so long? I mean, there are so many other issues that this ties in with. Our inability to get anything done in this country.
Yeah, it just takes so long. It takes far longer than people would have thought. And even, as we were saying earlier in the discussion, even when there is an inquiry, a 7-year inquiry, 20 recommendations, only 2 of them being implemented at the moment. What's the point?
Lessons learned, Peter. Lessons learned.
Lessons will be learned, except they never are.
Again, there should be an absolute requirement. If you set up an inquiry, you have to enact all of the recommendations within a year. Full stop. Or it's resigning matter. It needs to be really simple. Here's another issue from PMQs. If you were watching it, you may have noticed that you couldn't see Nigel Farage. He's a party leader. He's the man who, according to all the polls, is the next Prime Minister of this country come 2029, the next general election. But according to reports from the political editor Sun, Kate Ferguson, Sun on Sunday, Nigel Farage has said he's going to sit in the spectators gallery for PMQs every week now because he simply does not get called by the Speaker. Now, there's an order paper, isn't there? There's a list of people who gets called, but you're also, if you constantly stand up, or if you're someone who has a relevant comment to make, you used to be the minister for that particular topic, or you've been mentioned in dispatches, you know, you are able to be called by the Speaker. It's up to him to decide. But the Nigel Farage has said, if they're going to treat me as a spectator, I'll be a spectator. What do you make of that, Peter Cobble?
Well, that is a very dramatic thing for Nigel Farage to do. It's a perfectly good political stunt to pull, because if he isn't being called, well, it is a stunt, but at the same time, if he isn't being called as the leader of, yes, a small party of 5 MPs, but nonetheless, it's a huge party in terms of the council numbers. It's going to be bigger. They're ahead in every single poll. They've been ahead in more than 100 polls. The Speaker should be calling Nigel Farage more often when he stands up.
Yeah. What do you think, Claire?
PMQs is a ballot system. This is what everybody needs to remember. You have to put your name in. It's picked out of a hat.
No, there are lots of other people who get called as well who aren't on that list.
But then you can bob up and down. But it doesn't mean that you have to be called because you are the leader of a party. What they normally have to do is say, take one from the opposition, one from a Labour backbench.
Well, the leader of the opposition gets 6.
Yeah.
The next one down gets 2. So it used to be the SNP. Now it's Lib Dems. Lib Dems used to get one like every few weeks.
Yeah.
And they've got very few MPs. They might get one very, very occasionally.
Yeah.
He's possibly the next Prime Minister of this country.
The Speaker should have a conversation with Nigel Farage, take him in for a cup of tea and say, look, you're, as party strengths go, you've got 5 MPs at the moment. I'm going to call you every 3 weeks for one question. Just say something like that. Just make a little deal. Do something that is perfectly reasonable, because I do think that Nigel Farage and Reform UK should be heard more, because the country's listening to them. Why isn't Parliament?
He's representing, more than 30% of the country at the current time.
And actually it says time and time again that the House of Commons is disconnected from the public.
Absolutely. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Love to hear your thoughts on what you make of PMQs. But obviously they're talking about the subject we're mainly talking about today, which is the grooming gangs inquiry. A big thanks to Peter Cobble. Thank you very much indeed. I think you're on a bit later. You're doing
Drive.
Wonderful.
4 till 7.
Look forward to listening to that. We're back with Claire Pearsall, and your call's up next. This is Talk.
Expressing these views.
We became quite fearful, really, of describing what ethnicity our abusers were, and it should never get to that. The lady that was running the panel along with the Home Office, she was an ethnic minority ambassador, so I don't believe personally that she was ever pro-victims, pro-survivors in this case. Everyone that's on these panels are very biased. They're not impartial. I think it was a way to find out what survivors knew, what they were going to raise, and how they could cover it up in the future.
devastating.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer and Claire Pearce. So let's get straight to your phone calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have yours say. We've also got some text messages and tweets. Try to get as many as I can in the next half hour. Chris is in Epsom and wants to have his say. Good afternoon to you, Chris.
Afternoon, Julia. Afternoon, Claire.
Afternoon. They always like it when they get a good afternoon. They feel loved and treasured.
She's going to like this then, because I absolutely adore your passion for what you do, Julia, and the way you approach things. I love your show. And the two best shows you do are with Claire and with Philip.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, the other ones are rubbish. I'm not saying that. You're very kind, sir. I think there's a butt coming.
I'd like to see you do a show after the watershed, because I'd like to see you let loose.
No. My language is so blue. You honestly, you wouldn't. I'd be taken off air within 5 minutes.
Listen, the grooming gang scandal, right? I was aware of it. Again, I was thinking about what you were saying. It was around 2010, 2012.
Yeah.
Now, what a stain on our nation, all right? Now, the problem is with Starmer and his obfuscation at the dispatch box again today, the reason that they can't get a chair is that there is no High Court judge or Supreme Court justice that is going to take that chair, because it's a poison chalice.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to take on every corner of the establishment, from central government, local government, social services, the police, everybody. So Baroness Casey's not the one to be involved in it. I'm sorry, but when she did that 7-year inquiry, she only allowed 2 pages.
No, that was That was Alexis J. No, Baroness Casey did the rapid review. It was Alexis J.
I apologise. I thought they were trying to pull the same stunt.
No.
What I would suggest is that there is no. As I say, there's you can refer to Stephen Barrett. He thinks the same as well. That there is nobody who's going to take it on because it is a poison chalice.
There are people who want it. Jim Gamble, who's a former police officer, but he's done fantastic work tackling child exploitation since leaving the police. I mean, there are people. It's just whether they're going to be acceptable. As far as we can gather, Chris, the government hasn't asked any judge, because of what the Prime Minister explained. He says because the timing, and it would be delayed by criminal prosecution.
What I would suggest, Julia, all right, I'll make a suggestion, and I want to say something else afterwards.
Very quickly, yeah.
I would suggest that the government approaches New Zealand, all right, that has case law, common law, based on our laws, our structure, and they ask for one of their Supreme Court justices.
Someone who's completely separate from
completely away from everybody.
I mean, we've already had that suggestion, actually, people saying someone from abroad. I think if we've got a system, we can't trust anyone who's vaguely establishment to basically get to the bottom of the cover-up of the mass rape of girls in our country. I think we've got bigger problems than that. You know what I mean? What was your final point you wanted to make?
The problems are bigger than that, Julia, because it was covered up for 25 years.
Yeah.
So the tentacles are going to go everywhere. What I get a little bit annoyed about is that, yes, mainly Pakistani Muslim men, but when you look at it a little bit wider, all right, that it is nearly all, to a day, Muslim men. Somalia, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Syria, Libya, they're all Muslim men. And
who were all?
The rape gangs.
The perpetrators. They're not all. They are predominantly they're predominantly Muslim Pakistani men. That has been very well documented in court cases.
Other gangs that have been operating in other areas, Bristol, for instance, the Somalia gang, I suggest you read the court papers on that. Is absolutely terrible. Made me cry. The thing is that you and Alex, the two fiercest women on TV, the conversation has got to be had about the religious side of what is going on.
Well, and that's one of the things that the grooming gang victims saying they're resigning over, because they feel that they're trying to water that down, because it is a key aspect of why they did what they did, why they're doing what they're doing, but also why they were not tackled for it, why they were not stopped from doing it.
Anybody that has a doubt, do what I did. Go on to Amazon and get a copy of the Quran and the Hadith.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, if you go to a mosque and ask, they will give you a Quran. The thing is, they're a fluffy interpretation of it. The nearest literal translation is available on Amazon and probably other bookshops. But if you read that and you read the Hadith, there's 186 passages in there that will tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I do understand the point you're making, and there is a very big issue, the absolute abject failure of Islam to have a sort of a reformation, to sort of, you know, a New Testament, if you will, and to bring values and rules of the faith up to date with modern Western democratic liberal values. And yes, that has not happened. And and we need to examine, and we need to talk about it openly without people shouting, you know, Islamophobia or bigot or race. And we need to have that conversation openly without everybody shying away from it. I couldn't agree with you more, but I also think we don't want to tar everybody from any particular country or with any particular faith with the same brush, because at the end of the day, these men who've committed these crimes against these girls, they are personally responsible for what they do. Chris, I'm going to have to leave it there because you probably noticed what the time is, 12:37. I've got to go to a break to get to our next guest, David Shipley. He's a former prisoner, actually, former and researcher on justice, about where we are with this grooming gangs inquiry as well. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:40 is the time. Care Personal. I joined in the studio now by David Shipley. He's a former prisoner, but has moved on from that. He's now a writer and researcher on prison and justice issues. A very, very good afternoon to you.
Thanks.
I want to ask you about the grooming gang scandal. We just had that with some dominated PMQs. It's dominating a lot of the newspapers today. How do we resolve this, and who should chair an inquiry? What should the remit be?
Yeah, I know it's terrible. I think I understand now that 4 of the survivors have quit because they've said that the people organising the inquiry are trying to expand it so it's just broadly about child sexual abuse, which would dilute away the focus, which needs to be on the very specific racist and racialised targeting of white and Sikh girls by primarily Pakistani Mirpuri men. And that's the core of this that was covered up for decades, as we know.
Because of the ethnicity and race of the perpetrators.
Exactly, because there's this fear of being seen as racist or disrupting community relations and all these sorts of things. And I think what's been really disgusting this week is seeing Jess Phillips essentially seeming to call the survivors liars when they were saying they had communicated these fears to her. At least one survivor has shown what she says are text messages between her and Jess Phillips, making these issues clear, saying that the survivors are feeling very unhappy.
But no, basically, they were asked to try and water it down. Jess Phillips says, no, they weren't. Well, here's the document saying, shall we widen the scope?
Exactly.
Water it down.
And indeed, last night, the Home Secretary, I think, did brilliantly on this. She put out a statement, and she was very clear. She said, I'm even rejecting this term grooming gang. She said they are evil child rapists, which I think is a very, very clear point here. And she made it clear that the inquiry is going to remain very focused on the specific nature
wait a
of these
minute,
crimes.
you say that it's going to remain. The inquiry, nothing's happened. It's 4 months on, we haven't even got a chair. Who could be a chair? You write on justice issues. Who could be a chair? Because we've had a leading former social worker. She's going for, I don't want to be in the firing line, basically. Don't want to be on the shortlist. We have got Jim Gamble, who's a former senior police officer, therefore unacceptable to some of the survivors. They don't all speak with the same voice, but he has had a massive, wonderful record working at CEOPS, working against child exploitation, particularly online. I mean, he would be a good choice to me, but does it have to be a judge?
I don't think it has to be a judge. I think it needs to be an inquiry which is going to investigate, compel testimony, and ultimately lead to criminal prosecutions for those people.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Absolutely. This needs to be resolved through, frankly, mass prosecutions of public servants who have been involved.
And
in
it does need to be mass, doesn't it? It can't just be a couple of people that will all pretend. This isn't a one-off event where someone knew something and didn't do anything. We're not talking about even just whether it's a terror attack or something awful, at a football match. We are talking about decades of abuse of thousands of girls across the country and thousands upon thousands of officials basically going, nothing to see here.
Exactly, and it's actually hundreds of thousands, we think, and you have had over decades, this has been facilitated by and covered up by police, by social workers. In one case, a social worker actually allowed the victim to marry her abuser in an Islamic marriage ceremony.
And she attended, a social worker attended the marriage.
Yes, exactly. So there are so many. There are so many guilty people here, and this is the scale of these crimes is almost unimaginable. And I think this is why the inquiry needs to tear this back. And yes, the police officers, the social workers, the council staff who have been complicit in this, all of them need to face public prosecution. Ultimately, we will no doubt need to strip people's public sector pensions, honours where they've received them away. This needs to be public and final.
There needs to be pain and a clear message going out in the future if you cover this stuff up. Because people cover it up because they're scared for their own job and their own career prospects. Well, you need to be scared, more scared of the alternative.
They need to be more scared of what are the consequences for betraying the most vulnerable children in our society in such a terrible way.
Doing your basic job not forget even as your job, just basically behaving as a moral human being. Look, we've had this row going on between the Tories and Labour as well on the issue of early release of prisoners. And look, you and I both know that not enough prison places were built, while the Tories for 14 years did actually, I'd say to their credit, they did actually put people behind bars for longer for the crimes that we expect people to go to behind bars for violence and sexual assaults and the like. Unfortunately, they didn't build enough prison spaces. I think 500 in total they actually built.
I think it might have been less. It was around.
They planned for it to be thousands, but they weren't. They don't count unless you got a prisoner in them. And the music stopped. Labour were left holding this particular parcel. They've had to do this early release. Now we were told, but it wouldn't be sex offenders, it wouldn't be domestic abusers, but it has been. Now there was a vote in Parliament about not allowing rapists and paedophiles and others to be given shorter jail sentences to basically ease prison space, and the Tories said, well, that was blocked by Labour. Labour voted against that. Is that a fair assessment of what's actually happening?
Yeah, I think fundamentally the problem is we're not able to build prison places. So actually,
why not? The government owns loads of land. Build a prison.
Yeah, this is the wider problem. The British say that we can't build anything. We spend decades not building nuclear power plants, not building railway lines. We also spend decades not building prisons. I think part of it is civil service procurement. This is very boring, but essentially the civil service puts people into procurement jobs and who have no experience of procurement. They don't consider it a profession. So you get these people who are just senior civil servants but have never worked in procurement negotiating.
I say, old chap.
Sure, and negotiating against these very highly experienced people from the construction industry or whatever company, and they get outclassed. And so the procurement is a disaster. Even like the government's ongoing prison building plans have been labelled as unattainable now because one of the companies they gave a contract to has collapsed. So we're not going to build more prisons. Yeah, and I think.
But either way, we've got a whole load of people. I mean, not many people get arrested for crimes anymore. Very few people get charged with a crime. Very few people get prosecuted for a crime. Very few people actually end up getting sentenced to time behind bars. And then they're being let out a third of the way through their punishment. It's an absolute joke. People are not happy with it, and now it includes rapists and paedophiles. I mean, a lot of people might think, what's the point of even calling the police?
It's understandable, yeah. If you look at the rate at which crimes are solved, crimes of the victim now, only about 8 or 9% actually results in someone being charged or cautioned or anything. So that's the solve rate. And
my bag thief has been charged. He just doesn't turn up to court, and there's nothing happening. I sent my monthly email to the police yesterday. Hello. Just wondering what's actually being done to make this person actually face the charges that have been brought against him.
And I think this is what people are frustrated by. There's no sense of justice being done all the way through the process. You know, if you go back 10 years, maybe 25-30% of crimes of the victim resulted in a charge.
Well done us.
Which was still bad, but much better than less than 10%. So now more than 90% of crimes with a victim, no one gets caught. So as someone who might be committing crime, you have a high certainty that you won't get caught.
You got caught.
I know, I did. But I think now that was almost 10 years ago. But I think the system itself isn't working. And then when people do get caught, often the punishment people feel is not particularly satisfactory. And we have no prison spaces. But also, when people are in prison, nothing good's happening. Our prisons are so overcrowded and so full of drugs. We're just locking people away, in most cases, for 22 hours a day, staring at daytime TV. They're not doing any rehabilitation work. We're not getting onto education or training or courses so that when they leave, they've got a chance of changing their lives. So the whole thing is a mess. And actually, we need to think not just about capacity in prisons, but what happens when people are there.
Yeah, and actually some of the countries do it very well. And again, it does affect the reoffending rate of people actually, you know, I mean, again, we know a lot of the people who go to prison actually come from homes, I'm not making excuses for people, but they come from homes where, you know, perhaps some worse choices were available to them and been failed by state, you know, schools, mum and dad and everybody. Claire Pistol, look, you worked at the Home Office, not in the field of you know, in terms of dealing with the police and crime. You're doing it more on the immigration side, weren't you? But I mean, this is a disaster. But I mean, you know, Kemi Badenoch and others basically saying, look, you know, the government's letting all these people out, and it's their fault. But you guys didn't build any prisons.
Yeah, no, and David's right. We have such a problem in this country actually getting anything done. The Lower Thames Crossing, prime case example. My son is 16. The paperwork was started before he was born, and there's still not a spade in the ground. And here we are. And
China builds, you know, airports once a week. I mean,
they build enormous bridges, train stations, train tracks. We can't even
this is part of a sort of an endemic problem, which fair Labour are trying to get on top of in terms of planning reforms. Takes a while again, even that. But I mean, I try and give fair analysis. At least they're trying to reform that.
Yeah,
your lot said they'd do it, and then they turned out an awful lot of Tory MPs went, "Oh, you didn't, because I don't want anyone actually building a housing estate near our lovely village in the countryside."
That's it. Nobody wants a prison next to them. Now, actually, I think that's probably the best thing. If you're going to have anything, I'd much rather have that than an estate full of houses because they're contained.
Quiet at night and very little traffic.
Yes, quite. But no, we are culpable as the Labour government as well.
Again, this is the old plague on both houses.
This is where the French, I think, do it much better because they.
God, that was a painful thing to hear.
They do though. They'll use national legislation.
The former president is in prison right now. I just want to throw that out there.
Also true. They use national legislation just to enforce building. They don't allow local objections and rights to block infrastructure.
But it is interesting.
Built.
So, you know, we've got paedophiles, rapists, and going to be back on the streets because we've got problems with our planning system. It's amazing how sort of joined up all these issues are, and frankly, how dull and boring a lot of the real meaty stuff that needs to be dealt with is in this country. Be nice if we had someone in who could deal with it all, eh? Anyway, big thanks, David Shipley. Always appreciate you coming, and thank you very much indeed. 12:50 is the time. Up next, going to talk about, here's a good news story. You know, the government want to rush through these digital IDs for us to basically control our entire lives and apparently stop channel dinghies for some bizarre reason. It turns out the voters don't like them, don't want them, won't use them, and don't believe it's ever going to happen. Wow, loving the great British public today. That's up next. This is Talk.
to think that these...
Absolutely. Just one point I would like to add over here as well, that people who are defending it from the religious ground as well. I personally believe that even if a religion mandates something, you still shouldn't allow exceptions for that religion, whatever religion that is. But the irony over here is that no verse of the Quran or the Hadith, the Islamic scriptures, they do not mandate face covering. The hijab, yes. The head covering, yes. But the face covering is not even in the Quran. It's not even in the Hadith. So for those of you calling it quote-unquote Islamophobic, a term I'm not a fan of, it's not even a mandate in Islam.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. 12:54 is the time. Let's talk about digital ID cards. Well, there'll actually be an app on your phone, and basically it's going to stop you working as a legal migrant. Apparently that's why the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, wants to bring it in. But it's a load of nonsense, and the public knows that. Fascinating new research carried out by Lord Ashcroft, the pollster. He's done a big focus group, found that voters of all political backgrounds oppose the policy. They believe digital ID will be ineffective, it will be costly, it's a massive hacking risk, and it will be used to control our behaviour. Well, ain't the great British public as commonsensical and wise as I always thought they were? Let's talk about this with Freedom campaigner Montgomery Toms. Good afternoon to you, Montgomery.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for joining us. I was really encouraged to see this. I have to say this poll results, well, it was a survey, a focus group, because so many people have been sold the lie that, life would be so much simpler and easier if we all had digital ID, and it would be safer too.
No, absolutely. I think something that you touched on just before I came on was the fact that this is not kind of like a left wing or a right wing thing we're dealing with here. I've spoken to so many people who just say we don't want to be tracked, surveilled and monitored. It's not about left wing, it's not about right wing. This is about our privacy and distancing the state away from the individual. And the other thing is, it's quite shocking to when you realise how out of touch Labour is with the British public. Like, I think that they genuinely believe that the public want this, and I think they're quite taken aback and shocked by the reaction that they've had.
Yeah, and indeed, I mean, was it 2.5 million people within a few days that signed? That's a lot of people to bother to sign a petition. I'm not a petition signer, you know what I mean? I very rarely. That's a lot of people who went, yeah. And given that it wasn't an immediate thing, it wasn't something that was coming in next week or a big scandal, it's quite interesting. But also, I mean, look, no one believes the nonsense that it's going to stop people who are coming here illegally on boats from working illegally and be that pull for those who are arriving as fake asylum seekers. I mean, because all these people who are employing these people on the black market right now are going to suddenly go, oh no, but you haven't got digital ID, I can't employ you. I mean, it's almost like they're taking us for fools.
No, well, they are, and they have been. But the really quite depressing thing is we might have a few more years left. And it's the public's responsibility to make their voices heard. We're seeing demonstrations emerging across the UK. Yeah. There was one recently, one of the larger ones we've seen, where the public just aren't having it. And there's no infighting on this front. It really is just a discussion of no. And people ask, how can we combat this? And I suppose there are lots of steps. We can sign petitions, we can speak to our MP, we can speak to our neighbours, outreach, social media. But ultimately, we are going to have to get to a point, potentially, where mass non-compliance is going to be one of the core
But that said, it's all very well, and I get people, it's like when we talk about lockdowns and things like that as well, people go, oh, well, I never wore a mask, or I never comply with this or that. Well, that's easy to do in certain jobs, isn't it? But other people will find they physically can't get a job if literally their employer goes, I can't employ you if you don't produce your ID.
Yeah, no, you are right, and I'm not being kind of blasé about the repercussions, of course. I mean, I work with Together Declaration, which were formed out of the kind of COVID lockdowns, pushing back against a papers, please culture, and that's why we've pushed forward for a digital bill of rights to say we need to ring fence our freedoms here. We're not against technology. It'd be ridiculous to say that. We're just against it being mandated, being forced on the public, and it coming with a side dish of, let's face it, a dystopian sort of social credit system style, Orwellian,
And that's people think that's a Hollywood conspiracy. It's not. It's happening in China right now. It's been happening in India. It's other countries are doing it. And we saw what happened during lockdown. We saw what happened with Canada, with the truckers. We've seen it. It's been happening. It's real.
And this is the important thing. It was a real challenge in lockdown to try and get the public on board because there was such an attempt to fearmonger and intimidate from the government. And bearing in mind, they were a Conservative government too, right? Yep. So this wasn't a left and right thing back there and either. But now the public have had enough. They understand that those that are in power are not interested in listening to the people, inquiring. Like a petition on that scale, the fact that our current government just battered it away and said we're just not really going to discuss it.
Yeah,
I know that we have this thing called democracy, but let's not bother about that. It's just insane.
They think we're all on the fringes. They're quite wrong, and you're quite right. It's left and right uniting on this, and also it's just people who've been paying attention. Montgomery Toms is a freedom campaigner. Thank you so much for joining us. Do come on the show again.